have to do a work session somewhere in there, so if there's any questions you have, we can take that up in a work session, so. We'll work this, but I just need to know what your schedule looked like. Maybe I'll ask Brittany to have you guys tell us so we can work these critical meetings and decisions around your schedules.
I've enjoyed not traveling as much. I've traveled the last 2 weeks.
Hey, Ann, the rule of engagement is if Diane doesn't show, oh, there she is.
She coming?
So she just pulled in.
Then I would steal her candy, but.
I have an extra one.
And it sounds like Joe is going, and maybe even Randy are going to basically pull back and not spend it. So if that's the case, they need to share with everybody else.
No, it'll make me sick.
I have to get rid of them, so I don't eat them.
I love these.
You know who loves them the most? Rob Lake.
He does.
Yes, I bought him and put him on his desk all the time at Rye High.
He
Addiction.
just had that meeting with him, that parent night. And he's amazing to work
Oh,
with.
he is such a great guy. I wish I knew you were gonna have a meeting. I'd have had you punch him in the arm for me.
Everybody, I had a list of things to do to him. Scare him with a snake. He eats snakes.
Hi, Dan.
Like,
It's good to have you. There was debates about if you're not coming, somebody's going to take your candy. That's yours.
Plug is in it. And so, I tell you.
I'd send you a
on
text
daily basis, I
and
turn
give it to you. She doesn't, she's not watching, but she gave it to you.
Do the 3 little dots.
That's enough to make anyone smile.
Might have to do it with your finger. There you go. Or maybe not.
Okay. Ready?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we go ahead and get started. We're close enough. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Roy City Council Roy City Council meeting for May 2nd, 2023. Time is now almost 5:30. I want to recognize that we have Councilmember Joe Paul, Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Wilson, Councilmember Sophie Paul, and Councilmember Skadden with us.
We'll get you there. We'll get you
No,
there.
I know you. I was thinking, thought I seen our youth council member. Is she coming? Okay. Anyway, Randy, sorry about that.
You're fine.
Skadden. In fact, we've asked Randy if he would mind giving us a moment of silence, also a pledge of allegiance. Randy?
If you can all just join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. If you can all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, council, we have consent items, specifically the March financial statement and also the March 7th Roy City Council meeting minutes and the March 21st Roy City Council special work session minutes. Is there anything, Amber, you want to share with the March financial statement before we jump into it? Okay. Then council, do you have any comments relative to the consent items?
I have a few changes I've sent to Brittany, but on the 21st, I was wondering if we could maybe just table those. I think there are a few changes that I wasn't able to completely go through that and get that to her. Is that
Okay.
a problem or? Okay, great. So for
Okay.
me, I would like to just do the first one.
Perfect. Then if you don't mind, make a motion then to approve once we get all the comments and then just exclude the March 21st until we have a chance to work
Okay.
through it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, council, relative to the consent items? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
I move that we approve the consent items with a few changes to the March 7th meeting minutes and excluding the March 21st.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
All second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those are approved. We'll take up the March 21st
Okay,
in our
thank
next
you.
meeting. Thank you. Okay, public comment. Anybody like to share a thought with us, any topic? All we ask is to step up to the mic and give us your name and your address. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. 23rd of April at about 6:45 in the morning, I'm leaving my house to try to go to an appointment. On 4075 West, there's a couple of city trucks blocking the road. Come to find out that there was a water break, some kind of a problem going on. Just wanted to give a shout out to Public Works because there were several houses in the area that did not have water on that day. And on this random Sunday morning, they were out doing their job and they did a really good job, fixed it as best they could. So they did a good job, so kudos. That's all I wanted to say is I think Public Works did a really good job that day.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Well done, Ross. Anybody else like to share a thought? Any topic? Don't be afraid. All we need is your name and your address. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Russell. My address is 2108 West, 3825 South, in Roy, of course. And I am here to ask or petition for blinking crossing lights at the crossing guard, or the crosswalks at 4000 South, where the elementary school is. We have other people here as well that's in support of getting some flashing lights there. I personally have seen crossing guards almost get hit by cars. 2 years ago, there was a crossing guard that was hit by a car. I do have concerns after school hours as well, because like in the morning time when people are out walking their dogs, people can't see them because it's dark outside. You know, they can't see people crossing on that road, and people just, they fly by on that road and they go so fast. And there's tons of houses down past Midland that never used to be there, 13 years ago when I moved in, so traffic is just insane. My son, Kenyon Radford, he works, I'm sorry, I get emotional. He works at North Park Elementary as a custodian, and in the wintertime, it's dark. He comes home at 6 o'clock at night. He crosses that crosswalk, and a car almost hit him. The car had stopped, but as soon as he got to the middle part of the road, the car just took off. And he said, "Mom, I swear it was gonna hit my backpack. That car was so close to me." So that really hits home to me. Sorry, I get emotional. It's not just during the school time when there's an issue either. I know there's issues with crossing guards not being there sometimes, but it's not just during school hours, it's after hours. I mean, there's a lot of people that utilize the library, the ATM, the parks, the schools, for activities. In the summertime, there's people that walk over to the parks because their kids are in sports. I'm one of them that do that with my 7-year-old who does baseball. So we always use that crosswalk. I mean, it's great that it's there. We want it to be there. It gives kids independence. It makes parents be able to, okay, my kid can cross this busy road, but they can't. Nobody's stopping. They're not obeying the traffic laws. When there's a police officer that is patrolling that crosswalk, the cars are properly, going the speed limit and they're obeying the traffic laws. But as soon as that officer is not there, that's when I see crossing guards in the middle of the road with their signs still up, and cars just fly by them. They don't stop, or they think it's okay if the kids are on the other side of the road and the crossing guard's in the middle, they can just continue east, or they can continue west. It's not okay. It's unsafe. And I just feel that for the citizens of Roy, whether they're parents or whether they're kids, and people that utilize the bus station that is just down the road on 4000, I believe it's just below the roundabout right there. There's a bus stop there, and I see people getting off there all the time, and they walk up into the Halvern subdivision, which is where I live, and they can't cross those roads. They sit there and sit there and sit there until cars stop. And I tell my boys all the time, do not cross until both sides of that traffic stop. Because you don't know that that other side's gonna stop when you get out into that crosswalk. Okay, I think that's my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Let me ask you one question real quick. Would you make sure you tell me exactly where this sidewalk is located?
It's on 2075
2075?
West
So
and
are you like right in
4000.
front of the school, or are you down farther by the,
It's one that's north.
Between the library and the school.
Between the library and the school?
So it's right on
so
4000.
not the roundabout?
No,
Okay.
no.
Above the roundabout.
Nobody crosses at the roundabout. That's unsafe. Even more
East of
unsafe.
the roundabout, then
Yes.
It's the one right at the back of the school, then between the school and the library, it's just that
Yes.
cross.
The school has a gate that
And
comes
is
off
there
their
only
field.
one crossing guard right there right now
Yes,
that you're aware of? Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Okay, hey, thank you.
Google Earth doesn't even show the library there. It's,
My name is Diana Anderson, and I was the crossing guard on 4000. I worked there almost 2 years. I even made a sign that said 20 is plenty, and I held it up on both sides of the road, in the morning on one side and in the afternoon on the other. And I had so many near misses that I left to work on an indoor job. I had a little guy who was 7 years old. He looked like he was 4. When he ran, he would come out of the school, and I got him to wait for me, but he is so little that if a big 4-wheel truck didn't stop, he would never see that little 7-year-old. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Name and address, thank you.
Sherry Kay, 2024 West, 3925 South
Thank you.
in Roy. And I live in the Halvern subdivision, and I take my grandkids to Quest. I've got these that I printed out for each of you, and it tells, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but this will tell a lot. Right here on this back page is where, so on the 17th, I was coming home, I was coming back from the school down below, and the lights flashing lights weren't on. And I'm like, what's going on? Long story short, the crossing guards never showed up at that day. And so I stopped and I walked the kids across. Horrendous, like seriously. So there's no lights. Cars are speeding at above or beyond, and a lot of them, when they come out of that roundabout, they've already probably been hit by a train, stuck by a train, or had to stop at the roundabout and go around, and they take off. And so I did get the kids across safely. So this last week, I went over and watched speeders go through. Here's on some of the days. There was 23 speeders on one day, 14, 2, 12, 9, and 2. On April 27th, I accidentally got on video a car, the crossing guard was out, and a car headed east went right through, speeding. And I was getting him for speeding, but then I realized, oh my gosh, he just went through the crosswalk with the guy there. And then I started counting the cars. Just in estimating 40 minutes, 489 on one day, 508 on another day, 452 cars on another day. Today, when I went there, 533 cars in just 40 minutes. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go check on during the day. So yesterday, I went from 10 to 1, and then I was there till 1:30. It blew my mind because I thought, there's no way I probably get 200. I got, let's see, I got 414 cars. And that was during the day. And I'm just concerned because I lived down in Clearfield before we moved here. And the speed limit on 1,000 was horrendous. And I kept going in before the city council, and I said, please, will you please lower that when the kids are coming home from school? No, we don't have any reason to. There's not enough kids that cross the street. And I said, but please, so then we went, us as citizens went again, 3 times. On the 3rd time, I stood up and I said, fine. I said, what is it gonna take? And I regret these words to this day. What is it gonna take before you listen to us and do something about it? Is it gonna take a kid getting killed? It was a few months later and a kid got killed. Right after that, they lowered the speed limit. It breaks my heart to see these kids crossing, you know, and it's not just the crossing guard, it's like she said, all year long, you know, and we have a lot of kids that some families don't have computers, so the kids have to go do their schoolwork across the street. Well, at 5 o'clock in the wintertime, it's dark, and those flashing lights would be so awesome. And I've also contacted UDOT, and I talked with Todd Finlinson, and he actually told me that he had talked with the chief of police, and they were going to put some here on 1900 and 4700. The state is going to do that, and he's like, you know, I'll tell you this, and then he told me that, and he's like, well, what's good for there, isn't that good for you guys too on 4000? And I said, well, you would think so. So I hope that you guys can listen to us. And I want, how many of here are just for this part? And so I don't know what we need to do. What do you guys suggest to get this moving forward?
Well, typically when we when we approach this, we always try to do a traffic study. Certainly the numbers that you're talking about would be a part of that process. There is some passive, about the best way you can do it, or more visible kinds of devices the city has that allows us to look and see how fast they really are, 24 hours a day in some cases. So the traffic study is really kind of important, but here's the key maybe I need to share with you. The city council has the authority without a traffic study based on a new law that just got passed that we can reduce the speed limit on any city street. So recognize that. But even reducing the speed limit sometimes doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
No, it doesn't.
Because if they're accustomed to go 40 and you reduce it to 25 and they don't see a police officer, they may still do 40. And so you look for some other types of avenues, what we refer to as calming devices, that'll help us to kind of slow the traffic down. And that's what the traffic study will help us point to, what's the right solution for that particular road. So I guess I can't speak for the council, I'll let them speak for themselves. But normally, based on your request and the comments made from everybody else, we would then initiate a traffic study. It will come back to the city council. The city council will take that as an action, and then based on the outcome of that, make a recommendation. And if the recommendation is to put a flashing light or other kinds of devices to help bring the attention that we have pedestrians in those crossways, then the city council can approve that and make that happen.
Okay, so one was installed down over the hill at the walking trail.
Yes.
That helps immensely. I went down there and I sat, and cars stop immediately, both sides, that they start slowing down. People don't slow down until they get right to the crosswalk. I got pictures of all the speeders. I got one with a dump truck that just come barreling down, and then he almost hit the crosswalk and realized what happened, slammed on his brakes. I'm like, what if kids would have been there? There was something else, and I apologize. Yeah, and it already is 35 miles an hour there. And they did, the reason that they wanted the roundabout was put in there was to slow traffic down. And it doesn't.
Well,
So-
for at least a little bit of time, but I think
Well,
the
it does,
comment,
but
then they
then, like
speed
I
right
said,
back
they
up.
speed
Yeah.
right up.
Yeah.
They come
Yeah.
out of that roundabout and then they take off.
Yeah.
And the same way going that way. And so I just feel like if that's working down there, we have more pedestrians up on 2075 than they do down there.
Yeah.
So can I pass these out to you guys, or?
Please,
I thank you guys
Yeah.
for listening to us.
And thank you for all your work on this.
So Matt, do they contact you when the crossing guards call in sick, or do they just not show up, or are you supposed to be contacted, or?
So they're usually pretty good about calling us in the morning if no one's there. And as soon as we get that call, we get someone over there.
Thank you. Oh, no, you're good. I'll take it.
Mayor and council, may I add something to this as well?
please, go ahead.
We have gotten a couple of emails about it, so we did meet today, Chief Gwen, myself, Matt, Ross Oliver, and Brody. It is a school that does have a lunch program there, so there is times during the summer that people are going to be crossing that street as well. We would be fine to put we could always do a traffic study. I would always suggest that. In this circumstance, we do feel that it might be in our best benefit to just put the lights up.
Okay.
We have those down at DRNG. They do work, however, they are kind of expensive. We have money in Class C roads that we can take it out of. Ross got some prices today, and it's about $10,000. And they're solar. We used to run the lines under the electrical lines, but with your permission, we can go ahead and do that. They are about 6 weeks out.
Okay. Council, you have a recommendation on the table. It sounds like at least they've been looking at it. Ross, I assume you've been part of that conversation because you'll be the one to help you do the installation. Matt's suggesting is that we don't necessarily, and we don't have to have a traffic study. That would typically be part of the process. But based on the testimony you heard today, if you're convinced that we can just go ahead and move on with this, certainly you can approve to have the city go ahead and install a flashing light. Comments?
I just say motion to approve the light. I mean, $10,000 is a lot less than somebody losing their child. And I live over in that same neighborhood. I'm just up in the Herefordshire, so I have, neighbors whose kids go to North Park Elementary. So I've seen the traffic myself. It's not. We need to do something. And
Okay.
if we've already established that we could easily do this and we have the necessary funds well spent in my mind.
Okay. Diane, you feel comfortable with it too?
Absolutely. In fact, this topic of conversation came up wondering why we didn't have anything there versus the side street. And so I think that question's already been brought up, and next step would be this. It would be excellent.
Okay. Sophie?
I like it because you've got your kids, and if the crossing guard doesn't show up, there's a way for the kids to push the button and people will stop. I've seen that because there's some kids that get there earlier on the way on 5600. And if they're too early, they still can get across.
Yeah.
So that's.
Ann, you have a
Right.
comment?
Yeah, I agree too. Do you think we should also have those flags? Do those work where they have them on both sides and the kids can carry them
as I say,
across?
yeah,
Maybe.
I would say.
Actually, suggest not to do those as
Yeah.
well. They
Did you?
provide us a false sense of security for people crossing the street.
Okay.
So the light will have to be pushed like down on the trail.
Correct.
And
And
the-
then the
they wait
flashers
for the
come on.
people to stop before.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we got to do something. Like, we don't want to be like the city she came from and wait till somebody dies before we do something. So,
Perfect. Joe, comment?
I'm good with it. I mean, anything we can do to help protect those walking across there. I could come up with 3 or 4 other suggestions, but they haven't panned out in the past, so we'll stick with flashing lights.
We've
I
gone through
already
those.
made the joke to him, so we'll stop
Don't
there.
do that.
Anyway.
so
Well-
how long would it take to get that flashing lights
You
up
said
then?
6 weeks out?
6
roughly?
6 weeks out.
Okay.
So, I mean,
So
that would be
after
perfect.
school's out then.
Yeah, well, perfect timing for like the summer school lunch program, because when does that
Right.
kick off? Anybody know? I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
June?
Right.
There you go.
Well, let me make just last comments. And Matt, I think we have a consensus from the council to go ahead and make it happen. Ross obviously is going to put a lot on your plate. More importantly, this is how we get things done. When the public feels passionate enough to be able to bring issues like this to the public, and particularly the people the city council has the authority to make decisions like this, then we can make right decisions on behalf of the public. To assume, to be honest with you, that we would know, we just don't know sometimes. And it really takes somebody to step up on the microphone and say, hey, well, you probably don't know this, but this is really happening. And so it really does make a difference. I'll give you one example. In that same street, up the street, you're seeing a lot of construction being done. UDOT is changing that intersection. The reason why that intersection is being changed today is because, unfortunately or fortunately, 3 or 4 years ago, a citizen who lives in the neighborhood basically says, I'm getting tired of my friends in my car getting hit behind when they make a right-hand turn coming up, heading east on 4,000. And we looked at the data. We had a different police chief, but we pulled the data, and you cannot even imagine how many accidents occur there. Minor, yes, but still accident at that location. That particular individual, bringing it to our attention, is the reason why today UDOT is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to correct that safety problem. If we can invest $10,000 on safety in the area you're talking about, we've done a good thing. But we could not have done that without you saying something. So please, if you have a moment, share your thoughts. This council's listening, okay? And this council's ready to step up. And if you heard, and I don't want you to lose sight of this, the people who really know and understand this better have already started talking about this. They were prepped, ready for this discussion. So this was a win-win-win situation for all of us. So thank you. Please don't let this be the last time we do this. If you see something else we can do that helps makes this better, step up. Let us hear what you have to say. That mic is there for a reason. Please use it. Thank you. Matt, we have an assignment. If you go ahead and let's push that, I'll take it as an action so we see it get completed. And Ross, whatever you need from us, let us know. Okay? Perfect. Is there anybody else that'd like to make public comment? All we need is your name and address.
John Clark, 3852 South, 2000 West. I just wanted to say thank you for taking action immediately on this issue that so many of us had come to speak to you about. So thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
Megan Coleman, 3985 South, 2075 West. I live right on that road that we're talking about. And I just want to add my testimony to it that when I cross the road to go over to the park or to walk around, I don't feel comfortable. So I can only imagine how a kid feels trying to cross there. And then I also wanted to comment, just for your knowledge, I would say about a year ago, the Roy Police did a little operation right there on our road, and they had a police car outside our house where they could really easily see that crosswalk. And they had another officer that was crossing the road, and they crossed that road back and forth so many times, and every single time they got somebody. So that might be something to add a note to this. Thank you.
Perfect. Just do us a favor. This will be an educational moment. It will take us probably, or take the community probably, at least a couple of months to be used to the flashing light. Teach the children. Adults not usually a problem, but certainly children. Make sure you teach them that every time they cross, hit that button, and certainly the crossing guard will be there, and that will help that process. But when they're not there, make sure they learn to push that button. Fair enough. It does work very well on the other places we have where those flashing lights are up there, and certainly this is an opportunity to teach them to do it here as well. Okay, thank you.
So Ross, will those be just like what's on the trail?
Yeah, those are great. Really very visible and, more importantly, really easy to access. So we're excited about that. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your hard work on that one. Anything else, anybody? Name and address. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Mitters, 4980 South, 3500 West. In keeping with tonight's theme of traffic, had a concern about protected lefts, specifically around 4800 South and 3500 West and 5600 South and 3500 West. I've since living on 3500 West and kind of like almost right there in the middle. I see daily near misses at those two intersections because there are not protected lefts at that intersection unless there's a long line of cars in the left turn lanes. I kind of noticed this all over town, not just those two intersections. And I understand kind of keeping traffic flowing, but what I've seen is, besides that, near misses, I've seen accidents there too. And specifically, my son has been working at Triple Stop now for about 3 or 4 months. He was, before the time change, was working at night, getting off at night, and walking home since it's so close. And what's continually happened is, as well, as he's got the green light and he's got the walk signal and he walks, somebody immediately over the green in the dark turns left, even if he's wearing bright clothing, even if he carries a flashlight that actually has a strobe, and he's still nearly been hit a dozen times. So I know I emailed, I think I emailed Matt about this about a month ago. If there's something we could do as far, and really it's not just in those intersections, it's really all over town. It's kind of like the San Fernando Valley in the LA area, where there's no protected left turns. People wait and wait and wait, and then they decide they've got just enough space and they turn, and there's inevitably an accident. And I've seen that a dozen times here in Roy since we've lived here. So it's just some food for thought. If we could, maybe, I don't know if those intersections could be timed. I don't know if it's from a study standpoint, if there's a protected left turn on every signal, if there's at least one car there, I think that would make a gigantic difference as far as traffic safety in town. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good comment. I will just indicate to you the roads were in question do belong to UDOT, at least two of the ones you mentioned. So there's a piece of this that we have to coordinate anything we do with those streets with them. So we certainly have their on the record. Let's see what we can do to make that work. As you well know, 5600 will be widened. As a result of that, that will start in the spring now. They'll finish their acquisition and their demolition. And there will be some changes that will be coming to 5600 in terms of that widening project. That might be the best time to see what options might be available when we have our next meeting with them. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Perfect. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your public input. Obviously, it does make a difference. We do have some presentations. So the first one is the Legacy Suicide Survivor Support Network. Judy, you going to share some thoughts with us?
My partner here. Well, my name is Judy Bazowski, as you know, and I want to thank you for allowing us to do this presentation here in Roy. My husband and I lived in Roy for many years, and in 1985 we became survivors of a suicide loss when my husband's 18-year-old son took his life. He was a student at Roy Junior High. He was on the honor roll, belonged to the Honor Society. He did computer programs for the Weber School District, so we were pretty proud of him. But in December, I think, of 1988, my husband and I became founding members of Legacy Suicide Survivor Support Group. We incorporated in 1992, and so we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization and changed our name a little bit. And we have some information that we'll distribute to you as well. We're certified through some national organizations, so we've had a lot of training in doing what we do, and we've done it for a very long time, as you can tell. We belong to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. That helps us a lot. We're also sponsored by the Weber Morgan Health Department and Weber Human Services, and we're also members of Northern Utah Hope. It's a Suicide Prevention Coalition, and they've been around for a while. You might be aware of the suicide walk that goes on in Ogden in the fall, and that's New Hope and us, I guess, basically. So anyway, we provide support for people that have lost someone to suicide in two ways. First, we facilitate a support group meeting once a month. Right now, we're housed at the Marriott Allied Health Building on the Weber State campus. And we also do a lot of telephone work. And second, we host or participate in several events throughout the year, such as the World Suicide Prevention Day luminary lighting that we do at the Riverdale Park, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Survivors of Suicide Loss Day at the Weber Morgan Health Department, then the New Hope Suicide Walk,
Then we have tree decorating in December at the Health Department Annex. So that's who we are. And before the pandemic set us all down, you guys do remember that, right? We did an event here out on the grounds here that Stacy's going to tell you more about, but we, of course, got shut down, and then the council's changed, and we are coming back to you folks to see if you will let us do that again. We'd like to do it on the 10th of June this year if we could. That's a Saturday. It'll take us a couple of hours, probably.
Probably at the most, yeah.
Yeah. And then we'd like to bring it back to April. April was the month that we had hoped to have it in. I think that's all. You can, Stacy's got some things for you here, and she'll pass those out as she talks to you. In the meantime, I want to introduce you to our board of directors. We have Don Buzowski, my husband, Harry Elmer, Jen Wayburn, Brady and Stacy Stanley, they go together. And Doug, are you here to support us? Thank you. Doug Myler is here to support us. Kind of thought he was. He belongs to the organization. So I'm going to give Stacy the microphone now, and she'll tell you what we're doing. Want me to stay up here? Or you want me to just sit?
Stay with me. So I'm Stacy Stanley, and like Judy explained, we did this once before. Basically, we call it a ribbon tying event. We have these little bows and paper cards that people were able to write notes about their loved ones. It's just a way to recognize and to bring awareness to suicide and to also remember our loved ones. So we just tied the bows and the notes on the lamp posts just out here. We had a table set up where people could come. We have all the supplies. Left them up for about 2 weeks. We maintain it and then take it down. So if there's bad weather and they get kind of messed up, we would fix those so that it stays nice. So that's what we're asking permission to do.
Okay. Comments? Well, let's comments before we ask staff in terms of impacts, if any. Any comments, council?
No, I'm just grateful. I know there's such a high suicide rate, especially since COVID. And I know our policemen deal with so much mental health, and I'm just grateful for what you do. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what do you need from us, like, as far as, do you want us to join you that day? Do you want, like,
Awesome.
how do you want, like, yeah, what do you need from us?
It would be great if you could join us. Advertise, if you have a city website, put that on there. What else? We brought table supplies. We had a little tent. So really just participation and awareness.
But you don't have a set time yet.
10 o'clock, June
10th.
10th. Yeah, 10 a.m. because we figured it's going to be getting hot. Yes. So that's why we preferred April. That's when we did it last time, and it kind of breaks up our events. We do a lot in the fall, and it's nice to have an event in the springtime.
Is this primarily for awareness? Are there some other goals that you're hoping to achieve at this point, or what is the event?
I think it's
whole
for
purpose?
two things. It gives the people who've lost someone to suicide an opportunity to express their grief in a healthy way. And I think
An awareness.
just to make the community aware. We're not sure how many people actually stopped by and looked at the bows. We're hoping a lot did, people coming and going from the city office, just, to make you aware that suicide is a major problem.
So do you have pamphlets with numbers on there for them to contact you if they're contemplating
Yes.
suicide? That you'll have flyers?
Oh,
and-
that are contemplating?
Oh, we can put the
I mean, or is it just people that have had, suicide
Had a loss.
affected?
Have had a loss
I didn't know
because
if
of
you
suicide.
had prevention stuff too, or is it just if you've had somebody?
Well, we do prevention stuff in that we belong to New Hope. I don't know if you've heard of New Hope, but it's a coalition, and
Right.
they do suicide prevention, basically, and awareness throughout the community, so there's that.
And we could put the toll-free number on ribbons, you know, we could have that pre-printed on things. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, for sure, to drive that awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, Ross, Parks and Rec, anything you see will be any problems?
No, we've done stuff like this in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay, so the location you're referring to then is a place right out here next to 1900?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Nevaeh, did you have something?
Yes, we have the Hope Squad at our school.
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say,
I think it would
Roy
be
High,
really
yeah.
cool if I could talk to them. One of the leaders is a good friend of mine, and if you would want more help or more advertising, we could do it because it's only going to be, lots of people are probably going to be sick of school stuff after, in the summer, but it's only like 2 weeks after we're out, or a week and a half. And so I think that they would love an opportunity to, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they would love an opportunity to help even in the summer when school is out.
Have them.
Okay, I'm going to reach out if that's okay, and then I'll
Great.
contact you.
Yes.
Okay, great comment.
I have
Other
an idea.
thoughts?
I have a question. So Matt, is this a situation where we could do something like, I'll say popsicles, something to bring the crowd in?
I mean,
Because I think if you bring something, people will stop by.
Sure.
People like free popsicles.
Those food trucks, whatever, bring a crowd, bring an audience.
Something to just to promote it a little bit. Yeah, a little bit of an incentive. Could we do something like that?
Absolutely.
What are your key ways of advertising and getting the word out?
Can I say something about that right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just got my Roy Connection magazine today, and it's awesome. I love it. But won't we have time to get that in just before that? Because will it come out that first week
Where are
again?
we at? Did we just hit the cutoff? We just hit the cutoff, didn't we?
You have till Friday.
We work fast.
All right.
Okay.
Can we?
Yeah. Get me what you need, and we'll get it.
We can try to get you in.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whose night's not mine? Whose month is it?
If that seems a little weird, the fact of the matter is, we are,
I think it's Sophie's.
we do have to have our information in there literally 30 days or so prior to the publication.
Over
so.
printing, yeah.
Any other comments, council?
Give it Sophie.
Okay, so is everybody okay? Any comments? Anybody have any reservations or concerns about authorizing then this group to go ahead and use that space just outside of the municipality building?
No.
Nope, I think it's a great idea.
Everybody okay?
You can
And do
even
a treat?
I
Yeah.
think you have a green light to go ahead and move forward with it.
All right.
If you'll
Thank
do
you
me a
very
favor, just make sure you keep Matt Andrews, he's a city manager, in the loop as this unfolds. We want to make sure that whatever you put there, we protect it. We watch for it. We want to make sure nothing we're doing is going to interfere. We obviously water. We may have some other kinds of things that take place on that ground. If that's the case, he can help coordinate that. But please, as you make that happen, make sure you get with the city manager and just make sure we don't have any impacts.
And with
to
it being a Saturday, this entire parking lot will be absolutely empty. So you may want to look at bringing in food trucks too to draw in more of a.
Oh, that's an idea.
I'm here all day, so.
We're glad we came
But
here.
would we have to have restrooms available or anything like that? If
We do have the restrooms in the back parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, now see how, that's the reason why it's really important we
know,
understand the
so-
depth and breadth of this.
I thought with
because
drink and
it's
food,
not
gotta
just a
have a
bunch of people showing up. There may be resources or things that need to also be in this. So please, prior to actually doing anything, get with the city manager and let's make sure that we don't create you a problem. And certainly want
That's
to
what I
make sure
get for
that we
being
protect
creative.
as
I'm
best we
usually the
can.
council member that inserts his foot in mouth, so yeah, nothing's changed.
Okay.
But just an idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think you got a green
That's it.
light.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good conversation. Okay, Captain Weed, I think we're going to be having a little Employee of the Month ceremony here, so please.
We're doing Employee of the Month, and Captain Weed nominated a couple of his firefighters on his crew, and he'll be presenting those to you and have a nice stuff for him. Thank you.
Perfect.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me this time to recognize two of our best firefighters here at Roy City. About a month ago, I submitted a letter to Matt Andrews to nominate Nate Buchanan and Carson Porter for Employee of the Month. So I'll read this letter that I wrote to Matt. I would like to nominate Nate Buchanan and Carson Porter for Royce City Employee of the Month. Nate and Carson are part of the new ambulance committee. This has been a 2-year project in the making. They researched multiple ambulance companies to ensure that this was possible. They created an RFP and designed a new 4-door ambulance design. Nate and Carson are always willing to go above and beyond for Royce City Fire Department. They spent multiple hours researching and developing innovative ideas for the new ambulances. They create new graphics, color schemes, and traveled to Florida for a final inspection. Many hours and late nights were spent mounting brackets, labeling cabinets, stocking supplies. They ensured that all the new ambulances were prepared and ready to be in service. Nate and Carson do so much for Royce City Fire Department, and I feel like they deserve to be a Royce City Employee of the Month.
Okay. Please, we have some pictures. Back there's never good. Come on up. Okay. Yeah, please. Anywhere you feel you can get a great picture. That's a perfect spot. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, you can get police out of there. Come on, man.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Before you sit down, we'd certainly like to shake your hands if you don't mind up here. So if we can do that.
Please, if I can reach. We can reach. Well done. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Well done.
Captain, thank you. Thank you for doing that. It's always great to see the leadership basically recognize the achievements of people, and you certainly have done that. And I'm amazed by the things you just talked about. That's pretty powerful. So, again, thank you. Well done. Okay, I think Amber, you're going to talk about the proposed budget for 2023, 2024.
Yes. Okay.
That worked.
It worked.
Imagine technology.
I'm an accountant, not an IT person, so it's kind of scary. Okay, Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present to you a balanced budget for the fiscal year 2024. This is just a presentation tonight, so you have just now been given your budget books for you to look through, and then we can have some work sessions later and discuss this, and the final budget will be adopted in June. So I have a presentation just to do a quick overview of some of the highlights that are in the budget. This was a collaboration between Matt and all of the department directors, and I want to thank all of them for their efforts on putting this together and for their support on what is in the budget this year. Okay, the total fiscal year 2024 general fund budget, and that includes Class C roads and transportation, is $25,291,333. This is a slight increase over last year of just 1.72%. We have kept the budget fairly consistent with the current year in terms of revenue projections and expenditures so that we can monitor the economy throughout the year and make adjustments as needed. As you can see on the slide here, it's pretty small. That's hard to see. And I can send this out to you guys, and I'll also send the budget document in a PDF, and we can put this on the website if any of the citizens would like to see it. But the biggest pie there is our taxes, and that's $16.5 million. That includes property tax, sales tax, and franchise taxes that come into the city. Our second largest revenue source is charges for services at $3.4 million, and that includes ambulance services and then our recreation, aquatic center, and complex revenue. This graph here just kind of shows the chart over the last 10 years for the largest sources of revenue. The first bar there is property taxes. The second one, which is the biggest one, is sales tax, and then the third one is franchise taxes. So you can see property taxes have remained pretty constant over the years, and sales tax has grown quite a bit, and then it starts to level off there over the last 3 years or so. This slide here shows expenditures by department. Those two on this side are fire and police. So our public safety departments account for approximately 50% of all general fund expenditures. Parks and Recreation is the next largest expenditure. And then the funding for Class C roads and transportation, those are restricted to only be used for those sources. Those come for the state and we can only use them for those purposes. This slide here, this shows an example of its public safety expenditures compared to property tax revenue that is coming in. So public safety costs are typically paid for with property taxes. And as you can see, the first number there, the $5.3 million, that was back in 2015. That's the difference between what we are spending on public safety expenditures and what we are bringing in property tax revenue. So over the last 10 years, now we have a gap of about $8.2 million because wages, for example, go up quite a bit over the last year, but our property taxes have remained constant. So you just kind of want to keep that in mind. As that number gets larger, we have to supplement that with sales tax, and that is our most volatile revenue source. So as sales tax goes down, property tax remains the same, and that's going to have to supplement those expenditures. Okay, so some of the proposed wage and benefit changes in the next year's budget. We have a 5% COLA for all employees, and we have still included the merit increase that we have done in the years past. As department directors, we feel that our employees are our greatest asset, and maintaining this step system with the merit increase is vital to keeping quality employees. As we have seen, wage adjustments to stay competitive with surrounding cities can be expensive, and including a COLA each year will help us stay competitive and budget for those costs much easier than for, say, a salary survey. We have also included in the budget a uniform allowance increase of $100 for all police and firefighters, and then $50 to all the other employees who receive uniform allowance. The budget also includes a 16% increase on our health insurance premiums. This increase originally came in at 25%, and we were able to negotiate with different companies and make plan changes and got it down to that 16%. So healthcare costs have seen significant increases over the past 2 years. They kind of call that the COVID afterlife, right? After COVID, healthcare expenses went up a lot, and we are seeing that in the increases to our health insurance premiums. We were able to add a plan this year that we feel gives the employees the most options available for them where to go to seek health care. And we continue to offer a high deductible plan that gives the employees a health savings account. With this account, they receive money from the city that goes into that account, and they can take that with them if they were to leave employment. So it saves, they can build up a balance in there and use it for after they retire or any other health expenses that they have. We have an open enrollment meeting next week, so employees will be receiving information on all of these plans that and changes that we have. Okay, for the COLA, I just did a comparison of what some other agencies around the area are doing for cost of living increases this year. Social Security is doing an 8.7 increase. Utah Retirement Systems is doing an 8% increase for retirees. And the state of Utah employees are seeing an average increase of about 12%. Some will see more, some will see less, but it averaged at about 12%. One of the cities did a survey of northern Utah cities, and of the 30 cities that responded to that survey, the average cost of living adjustment amongst those cities was 4.9%. So we're coming in, about where we feel we should be for a COLA this year. Over the past 12 months, we have had 31 full-time employees leave for other employment. That equates to 20% of our full-time staff. So the job market is becoming increasingly competitive, and we feel this 5% cost of living adjustment in the current budget will help us be competitive with wages and not fall behind to the neighboring cities around us. Besides wages, we are always continually to look for ways to increase job satisfaction through benefits and creating a good work-life balance is some of the things we look at. Utah Retirement Systems didn't propose any changes to what we have to pay for retirement this year, so there's no budget increases there. We did have a few new position requests, reclassification requests, and adjustments to employee positions. These requests were all evaluated, and the budget does include funding for a reclassification of an evidence clerk to an evidence technician in the police department. We feel that that will more closely match their job duties that they are performing there. Okay, for capital, In the capital projects fund, we have a few projects and equipment proposed. This slide just shows a total by department, and a full list of capital items is included in your budget document that you have there. The largest expense item is a new pool liner at the Aquatic Center for the leisure pool, and that's coming in at $725,000. As we discuss the strategic plan and planning for the future, we need to start discussing ways for saving for these large expenses as they come up, because they are becoming significant costs. Specifically for the complex, aquatic center, and then park playground equipment. If we could start saving approximately $85,000 each year, this would ensure that we have funds available when these large expenses are needed. You will also notice there isn't anything currently in the budget for the complex reconstruction. This is because we have money in the budget this year to pay for that reconstruction, but we don't know how much is going to be this year and how much will be next year. So whatever isn't spent by the end of June, we will rebudget that into next year, and we will add the ramp grant and whatever donations we have so that we can spend the rest of that next year. And we will add that in June when we do the final budget. We'll also probably have a few other capital items that we have in the budget this year that it's been hard to get items in, so sometimes we have to rebudget those into next year just because we haven't taken delivery of items, and so we'll do that in the final budget in June as well. Okay, so that's it for the general fund. As we move on to the utility enterprise funds, we will see fee increases for utility bills. The proposed budget includes a fee increase for the stormwater utility fund and the solid waste utility fund. This total increase is $2.45 per month for residential customers. The stormwater department continues to have increases in regulations that they are required to follow, and this increase will allow them to hire one additional employee to help them comply with all of those requirements. And then we received fee increases from our service providers of waste management and the Weber County landfill. So that increase will cover that for the garbage fund. So you can see it's $1.65 for the stormwater and 80 cents for the solid waste fund. And then the water and sewer utility fund, they have an operations budget of about $9 million. We have an administration budget of $900,000. And then they have capital in there of $3 million. The stormwater utility fund has an operations budget of $1.2 million, and that does include that new position, operator one, that we will be adding. And they have capital proposed of $150,000. The solid waste fund has a budget of almost $3 million, and then they have $170,000 budgeted for capital. The city has two internal service funds that provide services to all the departments. This is the information technology fund and then the risk management fund. The information technology budget is $900,000 this year, and that provides services to all the departments within the city for things like phones, computers, and then annual service contracts for items like the police body cameras and then the video storage for what comes off those cameras. The risk management budget is $350,000, and it includes insurance premiums for liability and property insurance. We have two special revenue funds. These come from impact fees off building permits. We have the Storm Sewer Development Fund and the Park Development Fund. The Storm Sewer Development Fund, we don't receive a lot of impact fees because we don't have a lot of new development going on. So they've kind of just been saving up money until they can get enough to pay for these projects. But the two projects they're working towards is the 4800 South Storm Drain and then the 4000 South Detention Basin. The park development budget, we have $273,000 in there, and that can be used for things that come up during the year that we want to improve our parks with. One item that we had discussed was possibly using that for the pickleball courts, because we did come in short on that, and we are getting another bid proposal for those. So that could also be used if we would like to use some of that towards the pickleball courts. The last fund that we have is the Cemetery Perpetual Fund, and as you guys know, our cemetery is all built out. We don't have any more in there to be used. All the lots have been sold, so there's no budget set for this fund. The city keeps looking into options to fees a second cemetery within the city somewhere, and there's a balance in there of $168,000 that could be used to purchase additional property. But if it's more than that, funding could come for the general fund or the capital projects fund at a later date. Okay, so the next steps in the budget timeline. This is now the tentative budget that we present to you to look over, and let me know if you have any questions. We'll post like I said, we'll post the document on the website tomorrow morning. The one that you have has a much more detailed narrative explaining the changes and line items for each department. We can hold a budget work session to go over the budget in more detail if the council would like to do that. And the final budget must be adopted by the June 20th council meeting. So that is all I have. If you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions, council, relative to the budget?
I was just going to ask, in the park budget fund, can you use that to plant all the trees that have died in the parks? Can that be used for part of that?
We can. The only thing with that fund is it's not getting replenished very much because, like I said, it comes from impact fees. So once that money is gone, that fund will be gone, and there's only about $275,000 in there. So we just have to decide what we want to use that for.
Okay.
Other comments? We recognize the fact is that you now have the budget to work, and we'll have opportunities to discuss it. But if there's anything in terms of the presentation that you'd like to further ask Amber, please, it's a good time to bring it up.
Appreciate all your work.
Yeah.
That's
Great
a
job,
lot
Amber.
of effort.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, Amber, perfect. Let me just make a point, if I can, council. When you approve the budget, which Amber would like to have that done by the 20th, it certainly could be done earlier if we're ready to approve that. But usually it's either the first Tuesday or the third Tuesday in June. By approving the budget is giving the city to execute what you've approved. So if it's written in there, they have the authority to go ahead and make that happen. Okay, just please understand it's important to do that. And ideally, it would be best, Matt, that we don't come back for approval. You certainly should tell them if things are happening based on what the budget approval did and what you're doing. I think that's healthy. Certainly would get the city council informed, but by approving it, that's a green light to execute that budget as written. And all expectations then would be is to make those purchases and whatever else you have to do. So obviously there's, I guess at the end of the day, you have the document. Please look it over. If you have questions, get back with Matt. Then Amber and Matt, we can set up a work session to do nothing but focus on your questions and concerns associated with the budget. Fair enough? Okay, nice job.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay.
Moving, because you're doing the fraud risk assessment too. Yeah, all right. I was like, why is...
She's not moving because she's
Yeah.
going to talk about the fraud
Yeah,
risk
yeah, yeah.
assessment, which is in the packet. So Amber, please.
Yes, okay. So every year, the Utah State Auditor's Office requires us to do a fraud risk assessment and then present it to the council. So it's the same one we do every year. We get the same score every year. So you probably remember seeing this last year. But what they require us to do is fill out this form where we get points depending on what they consider would be fraud risk. So what level are we at for a risk for having fraud committed within the city? So we received a score of 335 out of 395. That puts us in the low category, so that is very good for the city. So it shows that we've been doing things to put controls into place and mitigate those chances that fraud could happen within the city. So.
So when are you and Matt going to get your CPA? I'm just joking.
Okay, any questions for Amber relative to the risk assessment?
I know.
Okay. You're doing well. That's perfect.
That's awesome.
Okay. Certainly the assessment pointed to that. So thank you, Amber. Appreciate that.
They did like me.
Okay.
They like my kid.
Chief, I think you're going to talk about the Roy Police Department.
Briefly,
Take as much time as you'd like.
do I need to share this?
No, it's in the packet.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor, City Council. So this will be the 2022 annual report. So this will encompass half of this budget year and then half of last budget year. So it's not, this is a calendar year annual report. So I'm closing out my second year as chief. It's been a wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate, again, the opportunity you guys gave me to be here. So briefly, this is our administration. You'll see Cassie Barlow is now the administrative assistant. We lost Jordan Earl back in December. She went to go work for a lending company with some family. This is our organizational chart. This includes the 2 funded positions that the council gave us back in 2020, earlier in 2022 for the 2022-23 budget year. In 2022, we only had one termination. We had 2 resignations. Those resignations were not related to pay. But following up on Amber's comments, we actually lost 1 officer this month, and we lost 1 officer last month for issues related to pay. They went to other agencies. Again, our funded positions are now at 41 for sworn officers. We participate in either these functions or these teams across the county. This list is actually growing again. It grew today, as a matter of fact. One of our officers tested for and received a position to be on the Davis County Bomb Squad. So we will have some of that expertise coming to our agency, and they will be participating with Davis County Bomb Squad. We've been watching vacation and comp time. We've been doing what we can to reduce the amount of comp time accrued and used, and as you can see, that is trending down. We also will notice that when we don't include those who have resigned and paid out their vacation, the amount of vacation is going up. And when we look at that, we believe that's to be because officers feel like they can take vacation. Funded positions are to the point where they feel like they can take time off and are using the opportunity to actually take that time off and use their vacation. You can see that case numbers started to decline around COVID. They're starting to come back up a little bit. But this is the trend over the last 6 years for call volume. Last year when I met with you, I reported index crimes. Index crimes were limited to, I think it was 8 categories. The state of Utah has now moved to what's called NIBRs. We actually get more granular data. They look at more crimes. And so the way we look at these crimes, we're going to be looking at crime rates, again, related to population, but because we're looking at a greater variety of crimes, this data should not be compared to what we were looking at with index crimes. So we have a baseline now, and according to the NIBRs, we have a crime rate of about 4%, or was it 408 crimes? Well, sorry. We have a crime rate of 40.19 crimes per 1,000 people, so about 40 victims per 1,000 residents. Countywide, that average was about 5.86%. These are the crimes that are being looked at now as opposed to the index crimes. And so you can see what I talk about more granular, right? We're looking at aggravated assault, following manslaughter, rape, robbery, sexual assault, sodomy. They've actually taken the broader categories and broken them down into these subcategories that we're actually going to be evaluating annually, which is nice because then we can actually look at these trends at a more granular level and better focus our efforts where they're needed. Domestic violence. So we had about, 50 fewer cases in 2022 than 2021. I think that's a good thing when we see that trend line going down. However, when you look at the arrests, the percentage of arrests actually went up. So while we saw about 50 less cases, we actually saw only 1 less arrest. So that means that the cases are actually becoming more violent. So there's fewer cases, but those cases are becoming more violent. Here's our motor vehicle accident reports. We're going back 6 years. And the reason we're using the 6 years is that's where we've got the new reporting system that we're using now. Traffic stops are actually starting to trend back up now that we have officers that, again, our funded positions are filled. They're coming to work. They're making traffic stops. Here's one that I didn't have in last year. I don't know why, but I've included it this year. So this is our trend for arrests for driving under the influence. And what we're finding is that, I'll have to confirm this with Captain Hammond, but we actually have fewer officers that are taking DUI shifts because they don't necessarily feel like they have to have the overtime. Psychiatric calls, again, we're trending back up on psychiatric calls. Handled 334 of those cases last year. We're still working with Weber Human Services on the receiving center. It's my understanding that there was a small hiccup because 2 of their providers were actually called back to active duty and weren't available, so that really slowed down the ability to get their no refusal center going, but it sounds like they're just about there. Here's our response times. Priority 1 being the most important. These are the 911 calls, 911 in progress, life or death type calls. We actually shaved about 14 seconds off on average for priority 1 calls. While that's good, I want to be clear that we don't actually have a time goal, right? Our goal is to get there as fast as we can, as safely as possible. So we don't actually have a goal time, but we did shorten our response time by about 14 seconds on priority 1s. This is our on-scene time. So typically priority 1 calls, not only are they the most urgent, but we actually spend the most time at those calls. And so when we talk about cumulative time, that is the time from when the officer first gets on scene to when the last officer leaves the scene. And on priority 1 calls, we're there still about 90 minutes. Here's our animal service calls over the last year. We have about 1,495 animals that are currently licensed in the city. There's 1,255 licenses that are either currently expired or inactive. Let's see, 179 impounds and 28 bites were reported in 2022. And we were talking about crossing guards and crosswalks earlier. So specific to North Park, there's three crosswalks that serve North Park Elementary, and between the three, there's about 61 students that cross daily. And then these were our goals for 2023. We're still working on our accreditation process. We're about 1 year into a 3-year process. We talked about the evidence clerk position being reclassified. And with that, I'll entertain your questions.
Yeah, great report. Council, any comments, questions?
I have a question on the crime rates slide that you had. I see, some of the cities have significantly increased numbers compared to us. And just offhand, it looks like those cities have more commercial properties and stuff. Would that be a reason that they may be so much higher than the other cities, or?
So I can't speak to Ogden, but I think when we talk about Riverdale specifically, yes, a lot of their crime is transient, right? Their population is so low that we expect a lot of that crime to be transient, and a lot of that is property crimes. But regarding the other cities, I don't know. I don't know if it's specifically because of their commercial properties or not.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments?
When I read your report, it said how you hadn't lost any officers for increase in pay, but obviously you have since you wrote that report.
Yeah, that was in 2022. We just lost our 2 just the last 2 months.
Yeah, was it like a big increase for them to leave?
I don't know. I just
don't
know
know.
it was an increase. Yeah, one went to AP&P and then one went federal.
So not to another city police department?
No.
Okay.
State and federal.
Okay.
Yeah. And Ann, I think if they went to AP&P, there probably is some challenges associated with the new prison that they really are trying to attract more candidates.
The state legislature did, that is correct, Mayor. The state legislature did dump a lot of money into recruitment and retention with the Department of Corrections this year.
Can you define AP for the terminology for the lay people in the audience?
What's that?
Adult parole and...
Oh, adult probation and parole.
Parole,
Yeah. And they're actually using their probation and parole officers to actually staff the prison because they can't get the prison staffed.
Right.
So you're currently down 2 officers then?
We are down 2, correct.
Yep.
And we have 2 that are on FTO, so they're actually tying up another officer while they're in training.
But tell them the good news, what happened Saturday.
Now you lost me.
How many people did you have actually apply for the 2?
Oh, yeah. So I think we had 19 apply, and I believe we had 12 or 13 confirmed that they're actually going to be coming to test on Saturday morning. So they'll be here doing their written test and their physical fitness test.
That really is good news.
Yeah.
We're hopeful we'll get 2 out of that bunch.
Yeah.
Like you said in your report, people are finding out Roy's a good place to come and work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, council?
I must be missing something. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, no, you said when I was sitting in your office and we were chatting about this before council, you said you had a big surprise.
Yeah, that's the bomb squad. You missed it.
Oh. It was, you should have said you had an explosive surprise to play off the punny
Yes,
aspect of
pun
it.
intended.
So,
I really appreciate these. Thank you
That's
very
cool.
much.
Yeah,
It's
thank
nice
you.
to reference those throughout the year. And
You're welcome.
I've enjoyed them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Great presentation. Thank you, Chief. Okay, we got some discussion items. So we're going to talk about the Roy Recreational Complex. We're going to do two parts on this one. Matt's going to take one. I'm going to take the other. So Matt, would you lead
Thanks,
out?
Mayor. Like you said, we have a couple of different parts to this. If you look down in the packet material, you can see that we're going to be talking about the renovation, and then the mayor's going to take the plaque portion. So just wanted to give you a general update. We have some pictures here from the renovation. If you have not been over there, it's a little bit of a dusty mess, but it is very exciting of what's going on. Ross Oliver and his team has had some challenges over there, but they always overcome them. As they were ripping out the pool deck, for instance, there was a beam that was completely rusted out. So just a couple of day hiccup, they got their beam replaced. And things are going very well. They're going to be start pouring the pool deck here shortly. Last time I was over there, it was just about a little over 50% tore out. RFP for the pool liner has been issued and received back in. Came in, we were hoping a little bit lower, but it came in where we were thinking. So things are going well, but if you ever want to go over there, please just contact one of us and we'll take you through there, because there is some hazards over there. So I don't know if you can really see those. We can also email some of these out. That right there is there's a tunnel system for the heating and air, or the mainly heating source around the pool area. That's underneath the deck. So in portions of that deck, they found that some of the cement was only about 2 inches thick. So construction during the 70s, I don't know.
That would make the building about 50 years old.
Yeah.
Years old, yeah.
Must have been built in 72.
I think it turns
23.
50 this year. Yeah, it's 50 this year.
So we have, the Public Works team did issue an RFP for the bathrooms as well. Looking to get a contractor in to kind of general that work over there as well. So all areas, boiler, everything, they're working each piece of that. So just wanted to give you a general update of what was going on over there.
How was the construction compared to the revenue we set in? I know we're going to be a bit
Pretty
short,
early. We're still pretty early on now, but yeah.
Okay. Other comments, questions, council?
Exciting news.
Yeah.
Okay, it's coming together. Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Let me just finish the conversation with the Roy Complex. As you may be aware or not aware, we had about 230 people who have donated their revenue to help get the complex moving as it is. That accumulated about $187,000. Brittany, is that pretty close to the number, $187,000? The idea, and Travis is not here, but I'm not sure, Brody, maybe you and Matt can help. There had been some discussion about possibility of doing some recognition for the 230 people who stepped up, okay? Some a lot, some not so much, but certainly a lot that have contributed to this to the tune of $187,000 to at least provide some level of just minor recognition within the facility for their efforts to rededicate or get the facility back to a point where it'd be rededicated and done. Do you have any concerns or ideas, or even maybe an idea that suggests maybe we shouldn't do this, that we can continue at least doing the work to see if there's some ideas we can bring back to the council formally about providing some level of a contribution plaque that will be posted in the city, in the complex, recognizing the people who went and provided assistance. Any comments or thoughts on that idea?
I actually like the idea of it. I was going to ask one question to go along with that. If there are people that want to donate, are we still accepting donations? I know the United Way piece is probably...
Yeah, and we are still working some other groups with the Miller Foundation and stuff with
Okay.
applications, so absolutely, yes.
I like the idea of it, but I'd maybe hold off till we get a little bit closer to see if we get more donations.
Well, that was part of my question, actually. Some of these look like we might be able to have a little bit of space and possibly add something in the future. Would some of those options be there? Because I believe that there may be other things that could be added other people are talking about it. I know Ann's already has some people that have talked about it in the future. You know, it wasn't right then. And it would be nice to be able to include those as well if that's an option, because I really did like a lot of these that were there.
Well, it's certainly, if you're willing, council, to kind of look at that going forward, first coming back with some ideas, but equally important with the process, look forward that says, hey, there may be some other things by which the population can help contribute to this complex. Why not? Certainly it can be put in the ideas, and whatever's presented to finalize at the city council, we can certainly make sure that it has some expansion capabilities if some other opportunities in the future does.
And I would also add to not only that, but maybe a secondary plaque, or in conjunction with that, a plaque of talking about the rededication or the reopening of it.
Yeah, and that might be an excellent approach
On
as
with
well.
the 50th anniversary of it.
So are you okay with us coming back now and bringing some ideas
Right, yeah.
about what's the possibilities, and then present those to you and see what your thinking is before we finalize anything?
Right, yeah, because I think we do like platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and I like how you have it like $1 to $100, because somebody might have only been able to give $5, $10, $25, but we don't want to put that they gave $5. We want to say 100 and less, so that But I like the way that you broke that up, and I think it should be on a wall to where once we get started on it, and if people maybe not start on it until it gets closer to getting it done. I don't know how long it takes to make one of these, but then always have available spaces that we can add people in there.
I think if you have the option of setting up our fundraiser, not again, but just to kind of do one last push, because I know there was a lot of people saying, is it really going to happen? Is there really, like, what if I don't or if I donate right now, where's my money going to go? So I wonder if we kind of do, yes, it's here, yes, we're paying for it, yes, it's, and kind of take that direction. And you might get a few, and not a lot, but maybe a few, because people didn't want to donate if they were going to get it back.
Right.
Well, and it comes down to the final stretch. I mean, we're going to find out there's a few more expenses that was planned for, that wasn't planned for. And so picking up some of that, splitting it between donations
Right.
and city, I think is a
Because
good
we
idea.
haven't heard from that one big place yet, have we?
No.
No.
Yeah.
It went in, but we're just not sure. They're still working through it.
And that, I mean, all I'm hearing is let's future-proof whatever we put in there. So let's not make it a one-time thing. Make it so we can honor those that if they contribute down the road, that we can take and do that with the complex. So,
Okay. Council will take your input and your advice, and we'll go ahead and come back with some ideas and get your approval before we do anything firm. Thank you. Okay, Matt, I think you're going to talk about the Royce 5600 Royce sign.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we've talked about this a couple of times in the past. The last conversation that we did have about it, we were tasked with coming up with some alternatives for that sign. Unfortunately, we're not coming up with anything special for it. I don't know how else to say it. It was designed as a fountain. We feel like we could turn on the water and make it a fountain again. We can conserve water. Remember, it's recycled as well. So we have the other one in front of the Harmon's parking lot. That's also a fountain. But to do something with it, we would have to put some major money into it, other than using it for its intended use. So we kind of wanted to get your guys' ideas. If we wanted to, Ross pulled out the pump of it, and we can see if we can get things going again. If we want to start running that fountain, or if we wanted to just hold off on it. But just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it, or if you guys have come up with some ideas yourselves. So,
If we were to put it back to its original purpose, about what would be the cost about to replace the pump or fix the pump?
We pulled the pump before winter, and I think it's okay if it is.
Okay.
It's not much expense at all. But
Well,
to replace the pump, you're talking $8,000.
Thank you. That's important to know.
Well, I think if the pump works, we should put water in it if it's
throw water back in
recyclable.
it.
It looks so
if it's
nice.
recycling.
And
How much water does it use? If we were to, I mean, I know we just got a new fire truck, so we could, have a test. Just throwing that out there, Craig. There you go.
And I think we should turn on the one in front of Harmon's too, and if it's recyclable, also just
Yeah,
adds
it
to
is
the beauty of
recycled.
the city. And
Yeah.
Okay. At this moment, what I think I'm hearing the council suggest, Matt, is let us think about it, okay? At this moment, you're indicating there's really not much could be done at this moment, but we can certainly think about it. And there will be a lot of improvements taking place up there by UDOT. That may change at least the landscape a little bit. Maybe that'd be a better time to come back to the council and we can try to assess the go-ahead. But what I'm sensing is, don't do anything at this moment, okay? Maybe if you want to check the water or something like that, that would just be back to original, that's okay. But no really any construction or any changes at this moment until we have further information where to go.
I'm also going to play a little bit of devil's advocate right here, because if we turn those water features on, but we don't turn on the splash pad.
I was about ready to
Splash
say
pad's
that.
not
thank you. I was gonna say-
recyclable water.
No,
though. It's
yeah,
just
it
going
goes down
the
the drain.
right.
That's right.
So that's the difference right there.
100%, but I'm just saying, we as a council should be prepared to answer that when
Yeah.
somebody asks.
Oh,
Yeah,
agreed.
but our answer is it's recyclable
Yeah, it's
water.
recycled water. It doesn't fall out of the system. It's just pushed
Right.
back through.
Yeah.
And I had one question. We talked about the upkeep because it's actually not on our property. Do we see that as a concern? What kind of problems does that bring into play as well?
There is potential problems there. Basically, this was done a long time ago. There's no agreement to our knowledge other than just a handshake with the previous owners of us putting it there. And so that's when one of the challenges is the secondary water in that area that waters that ground to the mowing, to the upkeep of the general area other than the fountain is all the responsibility of the landowner. We don't have an easement there or anything other than just the street easement for it. So that is a challenge, and yeah, like I totally agree. For the general upkeep of that area, we always have to be in relations with the property owner, and they have changed, so.
And is the
Well-
property owner that restaurant? They're not,
Yes.
okay.
I think before we put any money into it, I think we better make sure we have some kind of an agreement with them, or if they're not willing to take care of it, can we treat it like another park or, another facility?
We can definitely talk to them and see what that would take to do some type of.
I know it's
easement
kind of
or
hard to
something like that.
isolate it from what's theirs and what would be ours, but, if we could maintain it.
And we have all those volunteer groups that have volunteered also to help throughout the city. We can get Pat Medell maybe.
Yeah. To help out.
Okay. Okay.
I will reach out to the property owner and see
Thank
what
you.
I can get from that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
just let us know, Matt, how that goes. That'd be perfect.
Maybe put timers on it so it doesn't run at night. I mean, I know it's recycled, but you're conserving if you shut it off 10 o'clock at night, turn it on 6 in the morning or something.
Certainly.
Food for thought.
Okay. Council, the next two we'll just go through real quickly, get your thoughts on. Needless to say, the 2023 legislative session punched out 575 bills. Not one of those was vetoed, which is interesting. And although the governor he signed all but one, and he just allowed that one to go into law, which is phenomenal considering. But a couple of those bills was kind of interesting, and I'm only going to bring it to your attention for you to think about and maybe help us decide the next step. The one deals with vacancies. Now, I sent you a couple of talking papers. I'll like to talk about the vacancy one, what we call municipality modifications in the law. And interesting enough, and let me just kind of characterize this a little bit in terms of personal experience. Before I actually got into this elected position, I had an opportunity to apply for a vacancy that occurred. And as a result of that vacancy, you go through an interviewing process, not uncommon. Some of you probably were here when we went through that. The interviewing process basically selected, I think there were 27 people that applied. It was down selected and through a series of processes, and it came down to 3 of us. And the 3 of us who were being considered for the position, 3 of them has to go through a process down selecting, and then it got down to just me and Carlene. And if you read the context of the code basically says that through a lot, and what the lot means is a process by which you can select that lot process, you then determine who's in fact going to be the city council member.
Flip a coin, draw a name from a hat.
Exactly. And so that's what happened. The mayor at the time basically went out there and they had a Dixie cup. They put both Carlene's and my name in the Dixie cup, called upon a young man who was sitting there with his scout uniform on, and then he walked up and he pulled a name out of the hat, and interesting enough, it was not mine, okay? And Carlene then was selected to be the city council member, okay, as a part of that process. Here's what this law changed, okay? First thing is, and it's interesting, is now it says you have to do a coin toss, no more lot. So in essence, it has a little modification. Second thing it says in the law, it can't be that scout. It has to be and can be the recorder. Okay? And third thing, which is really interesting, is that if you're in a 6-council member council, which we are, and there's a tie vote, which there was, 2 council members on this side voted for 1 council member, Carlene, 2 council members on this side voted for me. The law didn't authorize at the time to allow the mayor to do a tiebreaker. And so we went to the coin toss, the lot process. This change now allows the mayor to break a tie. So there are some fundamental changes that have occurred as a result of this law.
It's the mayor's seat that's open.
If it's a mayor's seat that's open, there should be 5 council members, okay? In which case, hopefully, all of them are there to do that. But if it doesn't, in a tie, then you go to the coin toss. Here's what I would ask you to consider.
And let me ask a question in regards to allow the mayor to vote. Is that allow or require? Does that mean another option could be taken? You could go ahead and continue the same option, or is that the next
Diane,
step?
you and I think so much alike. That's the reason why we hired Matt. What I'd ask is, and it's a simple request, let's ask Matt Wilson, the city attorney, to assess this and make some tweaking, okay, to our law to bring it in compliance, if it needs to be tweaked at all. He's the legal. Matt, I have all the confidence you can certainly review. In this case, it's House Bill 73. And if House Bill 73 allows us to tweak a little bit of what we already got on the books in terms of how we do the municipality change, that also includes you. It can be a city council member, it could be a mayor. Then you can help feed that back to us and we can make a decision based on your recommendation.
One clarification, doesn't our current ordinance law, whatever you want to call it, allow if there's a tie vote on an ordinance or anything that the mayor can break the tie anyway?
Exactly.
So you'd just be following basically in line with what we're currently doing. You're
Everything
just adding
else.
vacancies into that.
Yeah. So, and we just asked Matt to help us define that, and if you're okay with that, we just ask Matt if he can work House Bill 73, okay? Last one, council, very similar. Interesting enough, on this particular one, and let me just, I sent you a talking paper on this one. It deals with public notices. This one's kind of interesting on a couple of fronts. First thing is the new law basically characterizes then public notices in roughly 2 categories. Either they are a Class A, which they define the requirements under a Class A, or they're a Class B. And if you don't think this is cumbersome, this particular law, which is House Bill 73, which was approved by the governor, had 331 pages. It looked at everything. So when you start thinking about what else could they be talking about, it deals with, in this case, ordinances, whether it be land use requirements. They have set not only where it's going to be characterized as a Class A or a Class B in terms of public notifications, but in terms of when, how many days prior, 7 days, 3 weeks, 1 month, it's all in there. 331 pages of everything. I didn't want to burden too much with Matt on this one because I think the city attorney certainly has other things they can do, but nowhere, to be honest with you, council, I found anywhere in there that it requires under the new law, and by the way, that goes into effect tomorrow, nowhere in there that requires us to post anything in the newspaper. So it's gone. But it does talk about other places.
Yeah, that's a change that they've been addressing for a while. I know newspapers have been fighting it, but I think more and more
it just doesn't make sense to require that to be in there. And
Yeah.
I know our code specifically calls out the newspaper several times, which we can leave. We can still publish it in the newspaper, but I'm happy to go through and look at those.
Perfect.
And provide.
How much does it cost to put it in the newspaper?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes it's 300. Sometimes it could be up to like $300 for certain ads.
$300 every time they have to
That's
post.
why the newspaper doesn't want to get rid of it.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Posting online's cheap.
So, council, if you're okay with it, what we'd like to do, if we can, is ask the city attorney just take a look at this particular bill and just help us modify a couple of areas within our code to bring it consistent and in line with the state code. Are you okay with that?
And I just have a comment because there is still a segment of our citizens who the newspaper is still, hard copy newspaper is still their primary source of information. Maybe we can just take a look at, what we think that percentage may be, and maybe there are certain types of things that would still be really beneficial to do that or maybe it's a phasing out as those are phased out. Anyway, just keep that in mind because it still is a very important part for certain set of our population.
I
Thanks.
still read the newspaper every day, I have to admit.
I do too, yep.
Well, thank you, council. We'll go ahead and have the city attorney, he's got some meetings he's got to attend to over the next couple of weeks, so upon his return, we'll go ahead and he can take a look at those. Okay, we have city manager's report and the council report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You did all receive an email on this, but just a reminder, this Friday on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, at 10 a.m., we will have the fire push ceremony for the new engine. So it's nice and shiny and out in the parking lot. Second, the Cache Valley Electric Company has been doing some work over on 6000 South. You've probably noticed that with the lane closures over there. They are needing to close down the road completely tonight, tomorrow, and sometimes next week. They notified us about that today. So 9 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. So just 6000 will be closed. They have other routes and stuff and signs that they'll provide the citizens that are up that late. Brittany did send an email out with the strategic plan and the updates. Remember our work session, we'll need to be working that here shortly. Provide us the information back to myself or the mayor, or maybe both, some of the suggestions before that we can talk about in that meeting.
When is the work session?
It's May 16th is when it was originally scheduled.
Yeah.
So we have not technically issued the schedule for it, though. And then also, we have been in conversations with the Weber County School District about a teen center over at the complex. They are poking around at a different couple of locations out there, maybe doing something outside of the complex adjacent to it. Just wanted to let you know that the ball's in their court and that we're going to be waiting for them to respond to us. So, but we did have a couple of communications over that. And then also, I did receive this in the mail. I just wanted to share with you. It's similar to what the Boys and Girls Club does, but it's for the Children's Justice Center. They're also doing a fundraiser dinner at the Echo Center. If you're interested, I would really like to fill the table if we wanted to go. So we would want to get the 5 or the 10 people there for that as well. You can just talk to me about that.
When
as well.
is it?
So
When is it?
It is, sorry, that's probably important. It is May 6th, actually, so Saturday, 6 p.m.
This coming Saturday.
Yep, so we just barely got it.
Yeah.
So maybe right now would be a good time to let
Yeah.
us know.
How much is a table?
Yeah.
They're
I'm
actually,
babysitting.
platinum is $5,000, gold 25, silver 15, bronze table 1,000, and it looks like the individual tickets are $100.
Okay.
So we are participating with the CJC with that interlocal agreement with them, and so that's all been said and done as well. So.
Well,
Okay.
I believe maybe you can just tell us how much we already contributed to that, but it seemed like it was quite a large amount, like 132 or 150.
164?
160.
Yeah, I think it was 160.
So that's a pretty big contribution.
Well, it was building a brand-new building, and they are getting contributions across the county as well as the cities to help do that. But yeah, Roy City definitely stepped up and to try to get that new facility. Certainly needed. Chief, I think your testimony we had a few months ago was powerful. You kind of told us really what that's doing and what it's able to do, and that was very, very helpful. And the council, as you're aware of, supported that. But certainly this is another avenue, so you can certainly consider that. Matt, anything else? Nope, that's it. Okay, council, before I have a few, but council, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I'll just jump in. In regards to the water features, Ross was wondering, do we want to, it sounds like we're putting on hold the 5600, but would we want to do the water feature at the Harmon sign while we're at it? And he would just like us to kind of consider that so he knows what to move forward with. And how do we feel about that? Is something we want to go ahead and do then?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, great.
Turn it on. Like I say, does installing a timer help with anything?
Well, yeah.
And then I just wanted to mention that the dumpster program was apparently the biggest hit ever. They said it was their busiest season ever. And I think a lot of it really is kudos to Jody because she did it 2 weeks later. And I think it really helped serve its purpose, meaning it allowed our citizens a little extra time to get things going. So thank you very much to your staff for that because I heard through the woods and all of that people were really appreciative of that. So that was excellent. And then I was just thinking that I was wondering if you, as the directors of your programs, would possibly be interested. It's really nice to have Matt do our summary of the really top level items that we need to do, but sometimes it's really interesting to hear, like the reason that we had the Employee of the Year, Employee of the Month. That's something that we probably wouldn't have heard about, but maybe once a month, maybe Chief Gwynn, Chief, Ross, everybody could just say some little highlights about things of their departments, because I think it's nice when we have a little more insight, because as we speak with citizens, we can let them know what is going on and what some of the really neat things are. I know that just for ideas like Ross and the potholes and his team there, when people are asking us, what's happening with the pothole stuff? Hey, well, this is what's going on, and these are the things that are coming up. And I didn't know it was something that people, on the council would be interested. If you guys are up for that, it would just be kind of a spontaneous, 2 or 3 sentence or 60 seconds or less. But I find it to be very helpful when I'm having interactions with the citizens. So anyway,
Comments on that?
Amber might have some really cool financial things she wants to talk about. So.
Finance is always fun.
No, but along the line of kudos, I'd like to throw kudos out to Lizzie and Parks and Rec, all those that were involved, the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, that was
It was
great.
challenging this year, but it went off great. People loved it. People enjoyed it. They got a little eggs, a little bit of snow, a little bit of candy, 3 seasons all in the same moment. So that was really good. So I appreciate the efforts on that. One thing back, stewardships from the sewer board. We posted more information on the city's website. We are a 35 million gallon per day general operating facilities. There are some peak flow times when the temperatures are like this that we're hitting double that, 70 million gallons a day. And they're pretty sure it's from cross-connected sump pumps. I talked about it in last council meeting, but we've got to hit it again because as the water's coming down and we're getting, we're not seeing flooding because we don't have rivers and stuff like that, but we do have a lot of groundwater. And so people are connecting their sump pumps to their sewer drains or their basement drains. And on peak flow days, we're hitting close to max capacity at the plant. And so just hopefully those that are listening keep that in mind. And we continue. I just come back from sewer conference last week. PFAS is an up and coming thing. You heard him talk about it when we got the presentation from Hill Air Force Base, but it's going to be regulated. The other thing that happened just recently is our bio waste solids. We sold off to a farmer up north, and he had a heart attack and died, Randy Marriott, and he was big to a lot of the different facilities around here. So now we're looking at different processes to treat, to maybe turn it into a Class A biosolid that will allow it to be used for non-agricultural fertilizer as well too. So we're looking at some new processes that hopefully will work. The outfall that they're putting out in Gilbert Bay, they're ahead of schedule. The lake has rose. We were figuring we were going to have to trench about 1.5 miles from our outfall to the water's edge. It's already up to our outfall. And so they figure when they kick the system on, they're building the pump house now, but when they kick the system on in about a year from now, if the lake levels maintain, it'll build its own trench. So if the lake ever recedes, it'll continue. But it's very imperative for the lake that we put out into there, and it's one of the things that's keeping the lake alive is that. So that's just my report from the sewer board.
Okay,
I
great
have
report.
a couple things.
Go ahead.
The high school dinner, I received a lot of thank yous from admin, from students, coaches, all the kids in the program. They loved the dinner and much appreciated, so thank you. The other thing, Roy CTC was able to partner with the Roy PD, and they collected between the Roy PD drop box and the Kent's drop off last Saturday. They collected 332 pounds of unused prescriptions or medication. So that's a pretty good trailer sized full of getting the medications off of the streets, out of the homes, so they can't be abused. And then just a quick, the ULTC conference, that was amazing. Thank you for letting us go. Thank you for always having that available to make connections, to network with other people. I met a lot of other people. The conferences, the women's lunch, always my favorite. A lot of great information that comes from those little mini classes, so thank you.
Yeah, great comments. Anything else, council? Okay, I just got a couple and then we'll close. I won't go through all of them. We got a lot here, but I want to hit the highlights on a couple. The Easy Ramp Grant awarded $2,000 to the city for the volleyball standards. I sent you information about that. That's a great thing. Thank you to our Parks and Recs who put that in.
What park where are those going to be at?
Brody, you have any idea where we're going to put the volleyball nets standards? To be determined. Yeah, that's that little place next to George Wallen North Park. You're good. Ross, I'll just indicate to you the 2023 local transportation fund process and request timeline has been posted and approved. We have letters of intent to take advantage of the county's transportation funds. We need those letters of intent submitted to the county, Brooke, who we're talking to, by the 5th of June. Just a letter of intent of what we want to do. I think in July we have to have a little more detail. So if we have anything that needs to be done, they do have millions of dollars available to do projects, road projects, typically transportation projects. So it might be an opportunity if we see some. We've used them before, but certainly if we see something right now. And then I'm okay with the rest of the stuff. We'll get those back to you and let you know. Anything else before we go for a motion? Please.
I did just want to do a little thank you. The mental health night that we put on for students, we partnered with Roy Communities That Care, and it turned out amazing. I talked to our attendants. Her name's Angie. And Miss Bodley. I need to be more formal. But she was telling me that we had over 80 students who were able to get attendance credit loss makeup, and there was food provided. We ran out of food, which is amazing. And so I just wanted to thank Sophie especially because she was there the whole time and helped coordinate with that. So that was awesome. And I did a presentation on it actually in my classroom, and we were just talking about how we have the best city. And so just another shout out. The high school loves you guys, and we appreciate the signs for graduation and just all the little things. So thank you.
Yeah, there was 250 students that was able to participate in that. So it was pretty cool to have Sandridge, Roy High, and Roy Junior all participate. And then a quick shout out to Miss Nevaeh. This is probably her last council meeting.
Yeah.
So she will be, we're so glad you have stepped on board and taken over and just showed up and been a part of this group. So congrats and good luck on whatever you do. Like, you've got a lot of stuff on your plate. You have a lot of
Be on a
stuff.
cruise the next time we have a council meeting, so.
Yeah.
I want to come back one more time if it's okay, and I can do
Yeah,
more of
because
a
we could
goodbye.
bring the new girl on, hopefully, our new South Valley president, Matt Williams' daughter, Nicole. And then
We'll
she
see
can,
if she wants to.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Keep us posted and take pictures.
Yep. Good luck on whatever you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going to
Be
the
on
U.
the Roy City Council one day.
Oh, maybe Salt Lake. Let's go Utes.
Go Utes.
Yeah.
Great comments. Okay, other comments? Okay, with that then, I have a motion then to adjourn.
So moved.
Where did I thought that was going to come from? Do I
I'll
have a second?
second it.
And go ahead.
Ann?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Take 10 minutes, please, and then we'll come back for RDA board meeting.
Right?
Yeah.
I was waiting for this like big reveal.
And had all the treatments, right? How are you? All right? Thank you so much. My list for April. Okay, we're going to get started.
There's actually a country song out of it.
Okay, welcome to the Royce City RDA Board meeting for May 2nd, 2023. Time is now 7:30. I want to recognize Board Member Joe Paul, Board Member Jackson, Board Member Wilson, right there. Thank you, Diane. Board Member Sophie Paul, and Board Member Scadden. Got that one right, Randy?
Good job. Good job.
Okay. We have, by the way, I want to recognize, appreciate Mr. Sant, Mr. Woodbury. Thank you for joining us, okay, today. Like to, if we can, to do the one consent item. We have, in fact, we have more than one. We have the September 20th, the January 17th RDA meeting minutes. Any comments, corrections to those meeting minutes?
I have a question. Is the September 20th, 2022 on YouTube somewhere, do we think, or was that? Because again, that was another one I couldn't find because there were a couple questions I had, and because there were a couple questions I had, and I tried to, clarify it to verify whether or not it was accurate. But well, anyway, I guess for me, I have a couple questions on the September 20th, but I'm fine with the January 17th again.
Well, the key would be is if you think it was worthy of holding off approving, I mean, that's quite a long time ago, but we
Right.
certainly want the record to be straight. We can certainly approve the January 17th and come back and hit the September 20th.
Okay. All right. For me, that I'd feel better about that because I did have a couple of question
Okay.
areas.
You can certainly, any other comments before I go for a motion? Okay, then if you would, give us a motion, Diane, to approve the exception of the September 20th.
I move that we approve the January 17th, 2023 RDA meeting minutes and hold on September 20th, 2022.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sophie. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None? Okay, we do have a proposed fiscal year 2024 RDA budget.
Yeah,
Matt?
although my presentation will be short, do you mind if we switch the action item to the presentation to get going on
And
that? for
do it
our-
after
Yeah,
we do the other one? Sure, we can certainly make that move.
thank you.
And then just one comment. Typically, we have a hard copy
It is actually, we just put
in the
on
back of that
it.
document?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I know where it's at. Perfect. Okay, we'll go ahead and jump into the action item was consideration resolution 23-1. Brody, adopting interlocal agreement with the taxing entities, the amend the 1900 Southeast Community Reinvestment Area. Brody, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Board. So yes, tonight we do have resolution, and I believe I did a typo. It should be resolution 23-4, but it is before you. Kind of the plan tonight. This is based on the project area, essentially on 1900 West, our main street. We have Brittany, the other one. Yep. So hopefully, actually, board members, I will hopefully speak very little tonight. Yeah. We have two persons here which have already been recognized. We have Josh Woodbury from the Woodbury Corporation. He has a few slides that he would like to go over and just talk about their proposed project within this area. And then Rob Sant, who has been helping us in our consulting on this project, is here to kind of talk big picture what the packet before you actually means and answer questions and then explain how we move forward. So with that, I would like to turn time over here to Mr. Woodbury, and then he'd be followed up by Mr. Sant.
Okay, thank you.
RDA Board, thank you for inviting me. I'd just like to, the intent is to be brief. The principals of Woodbury Corporation have owned the property, the Roy Marketplace shopping center property for a couple decades. We intend to continue to own it for a number of decades into the future. But we think it's appropriate this time to look at, look at the next life of the shopping center and do a substantial reinvestment, not only in our property, but also we always feel the investments in our property have to must be an investment in the community as well and have an impact in the community. I really think that, I applaud, my father, decades ago for buying property in a really good location, because I think that now this property is really primed from a location standpoint to be able to make an impact in Roy City. We have, if we can go to the site plan really quickly. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. So this is just a high-level site plan of, when we look, all the buildings, most all the buildings here, are the Roy Marketplace property. Everything to the south, which is the right side of the page, we have looked at, an opportunity to redevelop our property in phases. And we felt that this southern, quarter, third of the property is the most logical. And we let, the tenant leases, kind of burn off so that we could move forward on a redevelopment project. And I think the RDA a number of years ago created, the area here to try and encourage us to move forward with this reinvestment. And the time has been right for a number of years now. And as we've looked at different, we've looked at different plans, different densities, trying to decide, what's the most appropriate fit, for Roy, and also gathering feedback from council as well on what they think those, the height limits and density limits should be. And up to this point, I think I agree with all the parameters that we have in this area and the parameters that I've been given. One exercise that why this has taken a little bit longer to get to today in front of the RDA was an initial plan we had. We were probably going more than 60 feet in height. And we were doing, what we call a podium construction, where the first two levels were concrete construction, and then we do 4 or 5 levels in wood framing. We actually found when we went to a general contractor to get our cost estimates that a feasibility gap was too great. It would have been too much of an ask for me to come today in front of the RDA board and say, hey, the feasibility gap is X amount. It was too much at the time, and so took the guidance of city manager and Randy Sant to try a different scenario. So if we can go to the slides a little bit, I'll kind of show what we feel is appropriate from a size and scope standpoint. And also we did some important design changes to help bring down the cost and that feasibility analysis. So I actually think that some of the direction from City Council on what our height limits should be. Of course, there's another analysis if we were to go to 80 feet or something like that. From a financial modeling standpoint, we could probably decrease this feasibility gap a little bit more, but then what you get into is an actual market feasibility issue, and should we build more than 400 units at a time into the market in one fell swoop? Will the market be able to absorb that? But also, I think that from a phasing standpoint for the RDA area, for the first building in the RDA area to be 80 or 90 feet, I completely agree that's probably not appropriate. So I think what we're designing now would be less than 60 feet. I think we're about 55 feet. But we do not, we minimized how much concrete is in this design. And we also cut back on the amount of units, of apartment units that are in this design. And actually there is just kind of an interesting, kind of financial balancing that reducing, even though we have reduced units, we reduced the cost of concrete more than those reduced units. So we're actually able to narrow the feasibility gap. So the proposal and the goals that we hope we can accomplish together with the RDA and also with some other sources, I'm confident that this is a project that hopefully we can start moving forward on by the end of this year with the support from the RDA. So this will be about 260 apartment units, but we also have more than 70% of the level 1 frontage is commercial uses. We acquired a pawn shop building in the front of this, so we tear that down, build a brand new kind of retail restaurant pad. But also, as you kind of look at this frontage here, you'll have kind of clubhouse active amenities, and we kind of use our clubhouse as kind of a sales area, so there are sales occurring in our clubhouse. Really the front of the clubhouse is where all the leasing offices are, so that's where sales and business transactions are occurring. And then we also are doing live-work units along on the ground floor as well. So, these are designed to be units where the front areas can be used for small businesses. And so I think that that's a use that various communities have really enjoyed because it actually gets local businesses starting and independent entrepreneurs doing businesses. So we can flip through a few other of these images just so you can kind of understand the size and scope.
So is it 5 stories? You say
Yes.
it's
Yep.
right around 50-ish?
Yep. Exactly. Yep. 5 stories. So typically a residential floor will be 10 feet floor to floor. Ceiling height will probably be between. Hopefully we can minimize it to about 9 feet floor to ceiling, but floor to floor will be about 10 feet. But then on your ground floor, because it's a commercial use, it's much higher. We'll have a 15-foot floor to floor on the first floor because of the commercial use.
I have a quick question for you. On your proposal, is it from one end of the property to the grocery store, or are you planning to take up that entire space?
Okay, good, great. Brittany, do you mind if we flip back to the site plan? Yeah, so it almost goes all the way to the grocery store. That there's still about I think that's about 8,000
4 units.
Yep. So we still don't do that.
You would tear that all down then and put in.
Oh no! We would renovate the facades of those units adjacent to the Harmon's grocery store. Is that what you're asking,
No,
Councilmember?
the place where you're going to tear down and put this new building. Are you going to?
Oh.
You're going to renovate that?
No, right. Tear it down.
Tear that all
Yeah.
down. Start
Then
from ground
does it
up.
go clear back to the freeway?
I know. I
Those
didn't notice it
storage-
went.
Is
clear
it?
to-
It's just
No.
okay. So it doesn't.
Yep. So
It's just where Dilly Dallies and all those stores used to be. That's where that's going to sit. Is right there.
That's
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And right
That whole
behind
area
it,
right there. Okay.
right behind it, and that's where the trail line is.
Yeah.
And the UDOT's right now working, and MIDA certainly is working to look at seeing how we can make that an active transportation trail. And as a result of that, perfect, for in essence, the residents, if we can work this one to make this happen, can literally drop on that trail and have access literally north and south for everywhere. So it's really a choice location.
Yeah, and this as well as properties that continue along that trail that continue to be in the RDA area to the south. I mean, again, it's a great property for Roy to create a focus on redevelopment.
So you say you'll remodel the facades on the south wing, anything with the north wing?
As well as the north ring. I mean, we kind of look at this as an opportunity as we reinvest on building building more of a dense mixed use apartment project. there's certainly an opportunity. We need to, we also need to reinvest in the existing building facades to, to improve, the performance of our tenants there as well.
And
So
just
so they're apartments, not townhomes?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
What are you guesstimating, just out of curiosity, and I use the term guesstimating, the market rate for the actual apartments?
Yeah. So we intend to be top of the market in the northern counties. We actually want to do more studios and one-bedroom apartments and less two bedrooms. And because of that, because we're doing more studios and one-bedroom apartments, the per square foot rates will be much higher. More than $2 a square foot, which will be. I mean, we're really not seeing comparable. Rental rates until you're getting to Farmington Station.
Correct. Yeah, and that was going to be my next. Who do you guys see as your next closest in terms of market comparison? Okay, there, thank you.
Yeah, Farmington Station, but frankly, we want to do from a product quality standpoint. We want to do what's being built in Salt Lake City. We feel that there's an opportunity with the amount of jobs that are occurring at the RIC. These are a large number of them are out-of-state jobs, so they're expecting out-of-state
Amenities and rates.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Nope, I follow.
And so you said you'll start it in the fall. How long do you think this project's going to take to be?
Yep.
Is that like 2 years to get those made, or?
Yep. Construction should take 2 years, and starting in the fall is ambitious, and I hope we can do it.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
And quick question, I'm probably ahead of the game. A little bit of green space or no green space?
So what we do for the green space is it's the oftentimes in cities you'll have park and green space requirements, but we're also providing the park and green space environments as our private amenity package. So our residents, it'll be less of a burden on the city of Roy because we're actually providing those amenities in an amenitized courtyard.
Okay. And then on your buildings in front, like the Bees Cafe, what is that next one?
It's the pawn shop that you were referring to that you were
Arby's,
going to.
pawn shop.
Yeah, well,
Are you planning to take those down
That you
Yes.
bought
to
the
the
pawn
mentioned
ground?
that. Yep, you did mention that.
Only the pawn shop's the only one that we own of the pads along the street.
Oh, not the Bees.
Because then you go Arby's and then the oil change.
Yeah, and you don't own that, right?
No.
We have the Arby's, but they're on a long-term ground lease.
Okay.
Okay.
So that there won't be a redevelopment opportunity for the Arby's for a couple decades.
Okay.
But the pawn shop is certainly one that we tear down and build a new building there.
Would you, and then this is ahead of the game as well, some sort of a restaurant? Are you trying to think of some
100%.
sort
Well,
of
and especially with who you're looking to cater to, you can bring in something quite
a sit-down
nice.
restaurant? That's
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Perfect.
Okay, I think that's my overview, and I'll turn it back over to Brody and Rob.
Okay,
Thank
Joshua.
you.
Hey, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the board. So, Rob Sant, Randy's son. I always joke when I meet with people that know my dad that I didn't inherit his hair, but I did inherit his passion for economic development. So, a little bit about me. I've been involved both in the private and the public sector with economic development since probably 2011. I was the Davis County Economic Development Director for 2 years, where I met some of you, and then went to the private sector as consulting, and then for the last year, I've been the deputy director at Sandy City of their economic development and RDA, and then I also own my own consulting company that I do as a side hustle. So that's me. And then Roy native, obviously, graduated from Roy in 2002, and I've known some of you my whole life. I used to have sleepovers at Ann's house, so excited to be here.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, so let's get into this. So just real quick, some of those questions you asked Josh. So what's really unique about this is there's no Class A apartment units really in Weber County. And it's a unique product, but the issue is you have the Class A expenses, but you don't necessarily have the Class A rents, right? And so that's some of the need for the gap, but then there's also, as he mentioned, as you have these employees come in from out of state, my wife and I, we have an investment property in Centerville, an old townhome, and we rent it for about $1,200 a month. And the guy that moved there works at the RIC, and he was like, I was in San Jose paying $4,500 a month for this exact same type of building. So there is a desire for those type of amenities. So let's get into this. Just as a quick overview, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk about the project area as a whole. I'm going to go over the uses that we estimate in the project area. I'm also going to kind of walk you through the remaining process that we have to go from today to having an active tax increment collecting project area. So if you remember back in September, you adopted an amended project area plan and budget for this area where we revised the map. And real quick, I'm just going to go through, for those of us that it's really complicated to remember the code, and they change it every year, which is really annoying. So we're going to go through it and kind of talk about that a little bit. So all of the laws and the statute is found in Utah Code 17C. That's where they talk about the process of creating a project area, where they talk about the various incomes that are included and revenue streams in project areas. And it was first created in the 1980s. And then, as I said, they've amended it basically every year from then until now. And then the biggest recent changes in 2016, they combined, there were three areas. There were CDAs, EDAs, and URAs. And they said, hey, let's confuse everybody and combine them into one known as a CRA, which is what this is, right? And so since 2016, anything that's created is a community reinvestment area. Go to the next slide. And this is just a little pretty graphic that kind of outlines what I mentioned before. So from 1989 to 1993, which I believe you still have an active project area from back in the 80s, they were known as just RDAs. And we kind of considered this the wild, wild west of redevelopment because there weren't really any rules. You just created a project area, and then the code said for 32 years, you get a scheduled tax increment, and that was it. We didn't have to go to any taxing entities, you just got it. So wild, wild west days. And then since then, they said, hey, let's have a little more transparency, a little more buy-in from the various taxing entities that are helping with their revenue. And so that's when they created URAs, or urban renewal areas, and EDAs, economic development areas. URAs, to create one of those, you have to have a blighted area, so some dilapidation that needs assistance. And then an EDA was all about high-paying job creation. So if you still allowed EDAs, and let's say it wasn't Falcon Hill, the RIC would be a great example of an EDA. It's all about high-paying jobs. And then in 2006, they noticed that, hey, there's a little more need that cities have besides just blight and high-paying jobs. So then they created community development areas, which was kind of a catch-all for any other type of need in a city. And that's what you saw a really big uptick in these project areas with kind of that catch-all use. And then, as mentioned before, in 2016, they combined them all into CRAs. Feel free to stop me with any questions as I go through this. So a little bit about tax increment. So the most important thing we tell people is it's not a tax increase, right? What happens is you take all the parcels within a project area and you look at what their current taxable value is, and that's called the base year value, and you freeze that for the life of the project area, and all the taxing entities still get that revenue that they were getting before any development occurred. And then a portion of the excess of that base year is what we as an agency get to play with. And so what we do is we go to each taxing entity, so city, county, school district, and special service districts, and we present this budget to them, and we say, hey, we have this need or this gap in financing to bring this development, and we need a percentage of your tax increment for a certain amount of years. And that's kind of that negotiation process, which is where we're at today. So this is just kind of a sample of how that tax increment is calculated. So the dark green represents that base year value, just kind of for ease of explanation, we've assumed $1 million. And then the marginal value or that increase is $4 million for a total assessed value of $5 million. And then you see the $5 million, they minus out that base year, that still goes to taxing entities. And that leaves a $4 million value, which then the certified tax rates applied for a city in this case, which produces about $5,296. In this scenario, we've negotiated 75% of that will go to us as an agency, which is $3,972. So we would be able to use that within the project area. So now getting into kind of the details of the Southwest 1900 project area, it's 67.52 acres. As you know, it's really south of Riverdale Road, between 1900 West and I-15, and then it goes a little bit past, which the Les Schwab, is it still Les Schwab? But that Les Schwab tire dealership on the southern portion. It's mainly commercial and vacant land. There are a few residential uses, but not many anymore. The current value is $49.2 million, and that's what that base year value would be. And then the current property tax that's generated for all the taxing entities off of that $49 million is a little under $500,000. So these are kind of just some things we jotted down as reasons why we created the project area. So it really does stimulate capital investment and development within the area. Josh hinted at that they're planning on investing a lot of private capital into revitalizing the southern portion of their land, and also to promote density and greater utilization of the land in the downtown area. Promotes job creation. We do anticipate that jobs will be created in the CRA. And then finally, it expands and grows the tax base for all the taxing entities. So this is kind of a quick overview of the development assumptions. So this is a really unique project because for the most part, there's two types of projects that are created. There's a site-specific project, so that would be like the RIC, where you have developments coming and you just do the land around that, and we're gonna take tax increment off of just that development. And then the other type is more of a, hey, we have this whole area of a city that needs revitalization. And so it's kind of a broader, not necessarily tied to a project, but it's just to help spur revitalization in an area. This project area has both. So you have the Woodbury development, which we just talked about, and we think that will spur reinvestment along the whole entire downtown corridor. So we've included both of those. So to capture that, I worked with Brody to kind of create a budget where we looked and said, okay, what type of uses do we think are gonna happen in the whole downtown area? We think it'll be a lot of mixed use with heavy residential to capture the job growth at the RIC. And then there'll also be some mixed use of commercial and office as well. So what I kind of like to think of is how Clearfield's really invested money along their downtown area right there, and you have a lot of those apartment buildings, and they have a pond called the Maybe Pond, and they're hoping to kind of have that be a focus feature of their downtown and build a lot of commercial office use kind of around that area and really have a true, this is Clearfield downtown. So that's kind of what we envision, hopefully, for this downtown corridor, right? A lot of reinvestment. So what we anticipate is 847 total units of probably multifamily, 250 or 260 built by Woodbury, 311,000 square feet of commercial, and 121,000 square feet of office. And we're projecting that will generate about $218 million of new assessed value, $13 million of personal property value, for a total assessed value of $232 million. So a really significant increase over the $49 million that's currently there.
I have a question on the commercial. Does that include the current commercial, like Harmon's? Is that part of that, or would this be in
This will be
addition
all
change?
new
All
commercial.
new?
Mhm. So it will be, that's kind of something, so I helped with Smith's development in Woods Cross there. And that's something really interesting that we noticed is only that Smith's block was part of the tax increment area, but R&R Barbecue, a lot of the surrounding areas rose up with that investment. And so that's kind of what we anticipate is, as you see this Class A apartment building, it'll hopefully spur other property owners to say, hey, let's get on board with this. And we envision higher density, right? So that's why there's such a big commercial number, is there's a acronym called FAR, or Florida Area Ratio, where you take the total footprint of the land and what that building is. So the more dense, the higher the FAR is. And we've anticipated pretty decent FARs in this downtown area, as you see 5-6 stories mixed with other uses. So estimated base year tax, 49 million, incremental value, 232 million, for a total assessed value in a 20-year period of $281 million. And what we're gonna ask the taxing entities for, hopefully, is 20 years of tax increment at 70%, which is what that beautifully shows. So, and typically what happens, I'll explain this a little more. So some taxing entities, they like the agency to have adopted the interlocal agreements first, which is what is on your today for you to consider, is adopting that resolution and the interlocal agreements. And then we will set up meetings with each individual taxing entity. We kind of call it the big three. You have the city, the county, and the school district. So we start with them, and then usually all the other smaller taxing entities just fall in line with whatever the big three have adopted. So after today, what we'll do is with your approval, and your permission, we will approach the county and approach the school district and start that negotiation process with them. And then we will also come back and, right now you're wearing your RDA board hat, but we'll come back to you as a city, and then you could take off your RDA board hat, put on your city council hat, and ask all the questions you want from a city perspective, vote from a city perspective, and we'll make sure that there's that opportunity as well. And then after that happens, we'll approach all the other smaller taxing entities. So this is a starting point. There's a chance as we get into it. For example, Weber County School District has a TIF policy where they like to limit their participation at 11 to 13 years and 50%. We're gonna go in asking for this and showing that we have a need for it. There's a chance that those numbers could change. And so if that happens, we'll come back after the taxing entities have taken action on the interlocal agreements, and we'll amend if you take action today, to account for those changes. So this kind of shows what the base year taxes will be at that 49.2 million. So the annual tax is 484,000. For the city, it's about $73,000 a year. And then the next column just shows what that 20-year total will be. So about $9.6 million during that 20-year life of the project. And then this is what the taxing entities will receive. So they're going to receive 30% of the growth. And so for the city, we show that at about $83,000, so an increase over the base, even at 30%, 1.6 million over 20 years. And then the total amount would be $547,000, or 10.9 million. And then this is the amount of money that we will use as an agency to help spur redevelopment and reinvestment in the downtown area. So at 70%, at that $232 million, you're showing about $25.5 million over the life of the project. 1.2 million is the average annual amount we'll have. This is just a pretty graph that shows what we just went over. So the little orange represents the base year value. The green represents what money will come to the taxing entities. The gray is what money we'll have as an agency. And then those last 5 years shows that after the project area ends, the taxing entities get the benefit of all three of those buckets. So these are the uses that we're showing. So the first one, we'll start at the bottom with the lowest one. That's a 3% agency administration fee and operation fee. That's allowed by law, and that helps pay for, if there's going to be affordable housing units, to look at that, the annual agency reporting obligations. There's fees associated with each project area. And so the agency is allowed to take a percentage to help pay for that. The next one is all CRAs have a required 10% affordable housing set aside. This money doesn't have to be spent in the CRA. It could be spent citywide. You could decide to give it to the county to spend countywide. You could give it to the state. And it's really broad what you could use it for. So some some cities, in order to help get the school district to participate, they've started programs to help school teachers, first responders, be able to afford houses within cities and counties. So there's a lot of things you could do with it. You could improve your current affordable housing stock. You could invest it in infrastructure that benefits affordable housing, so road projects, anything like that. It's pretty broad, but there is a 10% set aside that will be used for affordable housing costs in Roy. That's about 2.5 million. And then the rest we kind of just throw into a big bucket that we call redevelopment activities. So infrastructure costs, parking structures, demolition, land assemblage. This will be a true redevelopment infill type of development, which is more expensive usually than a greenfield, because you do have those costs of going in and raising buildings, upsizing infrastructure, dealing with traffic as you're building something new. So are increased costs with this type of development, which is usually a big factor and maybe why we haven't seen any reinvestment in the downtown area, because it's more expensive than just purchasing 6 acres of farmland. And this is kind of just, we call this but for, or extraordinary costs. So as a board, we're not interested in just giving money away, right? We want to make sure there's a true extraordinary need that is facilitating and requiring public assistance. So that's kind of what we've identified here. Some of these numbers still need to be explored and kind of calculated, but really we've identified 3 main but-for expenses in the area. So the first one is parking structures, right? So we could increase density. Typically, as you know, drive around, there's not a lot of apartments with parking structures in Weber County, Davis County, because it's hard to pencil with as a developer. Because again, you can't really justify the rents to offset the cost of that parking structure. So we've anticipated there could be up to $36 million of parking structure needs in this area, and that's at 1,200 stalls, and about $30,000 a stall is what probably the low end is to create a parking structure today. The City Creek was $75,000 a stall because they went underground. So then, as I mentioned before, there's lots of infill costs. So taking down buildings, potentially assembling land on the southern portion of the area to have maybe bigger pad sites to help spur reinvestment. That's something that North Salt Lake did along the Highway 89, is they used a lot of tax increment to purchase small little car dealership pads, so then they could turn around and incentivize development on maybe 2 or 3 acres instead of just quarter acre, half an acre. Infrastructure improvements, infrastructure upsizing. It's really a bucket. Any need that we have in this area would be captured in that. And we show and then the last one would be market conditions. So really across the whole entire state, if a development hasn't started, they're on hold for 2 years for the market to correct itself. And that's both interest rates and then costs of construction is gigantic. So we've anticipated that there could be about $7.2 million of market condition costs. That number is a little lower than the other ones because that's really just tied to Woodbury, because that's what we know about right now. And we anticipate when the other development starts, hopefully the market has corrected itself. So we've identified about $43.2 million of but-for costs, and then the $25 million to pay for that. And I think that's it. Questions?
Any questions for Rob?
Sorry for all the data.
Well, actually, I'm sorry I didn't have these questions available. We just got this information. And so I was wondering through the rest of the packet if I could just ask a few questions for clarification.
Yep.
Because it is a lot of data. And my understanding is this is what the data that you take with our name blessing to these entities. And so I just want to make sure we understand the data and that what it's that it's representing us and we understand what that is. So if you don't mind, I did have some questions in that regard.
Perfect.
So when you're talking about, for example, I don't know what the Benlock Ranch development is. Is that something for a comparison, or maybe you could just kind of review some of those questions, or we know what that is. It talks about the cost-benefit summary for the Benlock Ranch development. And as I was trying to understand the impact.
It's from what? That's what it was. That might have just been a typo.
I see. So that's another unit, or that's another project, or
Correct, yep.
or the tablet or the table shouldn't be in, or it's just
So and I'll go and I could review that and double
okay,
check and
so-
come back to you.
And maybe I can bug you later on
Yep,
these
yep.
details and stuff like that. And then I was wondering, as we take a look about 4 pages, it talks about later the Royce Development, Royce City Development Agency Development Pro Forma. And I was just wondering, when you're talking about the additional assumptions, it's about a third of the way down. There's a little area that says primary residential exemption at 45%, personal property rate at 15%, growth rate at 0%. Could you just maybe explain that a bit for me, please?
Definitely, yep.
Thank you.
So in the state of Utah, if any residential unit is someone's primary residential unit, it's taxed at only 55% of its value. So if you had $1 million home, you would only pay taxes off of $550,000 of that home. And it doesn't matter if it's a for rent apartment building or a single family home, as long as it's someone's primary residential unit, then it receives that exemption. And then the 15% personal property. So typically in Utah, personal property is self-reported by businesses, and there's actually a schedule where when you buy property, depending on what class you're in, it depreciates. So it might start at 80% of the value you bought, and then eventually gets down to 11%, 4%. Really, as we don't know exactly what uses will be in there, we just assume kind of a flat 15% of the building value to capture some of that assessed value from the personal property.
And so that's why it's in red. What you're saying is that this assumption is we anticipate that this will be tax increment we won't realize because of those
Correct, yep.
percentages. So you're
And
saying
then-
this is what we won't realize.
And then the
Okay.
0% growth. So a lot of
Yes.
consultants, when they budget and forecast, they include some sort of annual growth, right? So 2% growth because property does appreciate. However, we're using the 2022 tax rate, and how the certified tax rate works. As properties appreciate, tax rates go down. And so since we're holding the tax rate constant, to be conservative, I also like to hold the growth constant at 0%. So we're only including the benefit of new growth, not
Okay.
inflation.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And if we go 2 pages further, it talks about some comparable values. So, and in fact, as we just kind of follow through them, what I understand you're saying here is you're talking about the building value doesn't really change. So on that same page, and this probably printed off different for what you have in your spreadsheet, but it talks about the apartments 2023, 2024, 2025, building value at 68 million. So I guess that's the building cycle, 2023, 24. They'll hopefully be available in 25. And then it talks about, as it goes through, 26, 27, all of this way up to 36, that building value doesn't change. And I was wondering, is that the building value itself, or is that something to do with that taxing entity that kind of keeps steady? Maybe you can explain why that number doesn't go up.
So the building value doesn't go up, that's back to that because we're
It's the same.
assuming the tax rate is
Okay.
2022. We don't want to grow the building.
All right.
Because if we did that really to be fair and equitable, we would have to decrease the tax rate, which is really hard to forecast.
Okay, great. So that's where that.
And I'm also, I'm great to share the spreadsheet itself too, so you could go through and.
Easier to see how it
Yeah,
follows
yep,
through on it.
Yeah, let me know all the questions you have.
Okay, thanks. And then as we go about 4 pages further, it talks about, it's got another heading, Royce Development, Royce City Development Agency Property Tax Increment. And it talks about assumptions. At the very top, it says the discount rate is 5%, the growth rate is 0%, so I understand that now. And I was just wondering what the discount rate at 5% refers to.
So that really who cares about that would be the developer a lot of the time. And what it is it shows so the budget is over a 20-year period. So it's a discount rate is kind of a net present value calculation in the budget, and that kind of just shows of what that 20-year number's value would be in today's dollars. So it kind of just helps them to show, hey, we're receiving this over 20 years, so what would that equate to as if we received that 20-year total just in 1 year? So since they get it and they can't invest it with time, it's lower than what the total amount is. So that's usually just a calculation that they like to use for then their internal pro formas as a way of kind of making sure that the project can be financed. And we do 5% with current inflation being high. Typically in these, we'll do a 4 or a 3%. You could also kind of look at it as an interest rate, right? So if you're bonding, it kind of shows what it's kind of the same premise as a discounted interest rate as well.
Okay, just to help me clarify.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
So when you're talking about discount rate at 5%, is that referring to like a depreciation value of the building?
Well, not the
or-
building, just this is a bad way to describe it, but it's kind of like the lottery, where if you take a lump sum, it's smaller than if you would take it over the whole life, and that's because they're showing it in what the investment would be in today's
Okay.
dollars. So it's just saying like, hey, if I had $20 million today, and I could invest that and have that money grow, that's different than having to wait 20 years to collect it. So really, the 20 million I'm receiving over 20 years might only be the equivalent of $12 million in today's money.
In today's dollars.
Yep.
Thank you. That was a difficult concept for you.
Yeah,
I appreciate
yeah.
you taking the time to do that.
The lottery one was actually good, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah. And so then when you're talking about, just at the top of that, it talks about total incremental value not changing. It's that same tax
Correct.
rate that
Yep.
we're talking about. And then as we go down further on that, every time we see uses of tax increment funds or total property tax increment for budget, every time we see that go straight across, it's the same principle all the way through because of the way the taxing entities
Correct.
balance it out.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, if we can go over probably about 4 pages then, it talks about the Royce Development Sales Tax Increment. And it's a shorter page, and it talks about time index sales, commercial sales per square foot. What I believe this means, and if you can just help me understand, they're saying that for commercial sales per square foot, they're anticipating that's $450 a year.
A square foot.
Per square foot, and that's per year.
Correct,
That
yep.
Your unit is per year. And so if you've got, and this is just for that particular development, they're anticipating 3,000 square feet. And so we're anticipating we'll get $450 in sales
You do 450 times 3,000.
times the 3,000. And then online, they're anticipating 4,500. And is that
Per resident.
that's per resident?
Correct. For online, yeah.
And those are the people in the apartments above. They think that
Amazon, Target.
they're going to do that, whereas the top two are just what the business is going to be increasing and stuff
Yep.
like that.
So there's two sources of sales tax here. You have the commercial square footage, and what we do for that is one of the studies that we do for cities is we do a retail leakage study, and with that we collect all of the gross taxable sales of every commercial business in the city. And so we look at a mix of restaurants, banks, different types of commercial uses, and then we see what their gross sales tax are, and then we look at we go under the county assessor and we look and see what their square footage is, and then we just divide the gross taxable sales by that square footage to come up with that number. So that's just a blended rate. I want to say it's probably from 2021. We don't have the Roy data for that, but we have a lot of different big cities, little cities, right? And so that's where that $450 number is.
Okay.
And then also same type of concept, but we're able to include in that report is any online purchase that's made in a city. So Amazon, Target, I mean, and what they say is it says delivery address unrecognizable. That's how we know that it's an online sell. So same thing, we've taken that data from Farmington, Layton. One of the studies that I did was the West Davis Corridor Market Study. And so we got all the sales tax data for all those cities, small towns as well. And so same thing, we kind of look and see, okay, we take the total gross taxable sales of all the online uses in a city and we divide it by the population. And that comes out with that little number of 4,800 is what the average resident spends in online sales. So then what we would do is we would take that number, times it by, let's say there's 260 units, 2 people, 520, and that's where we come up with what that could generate in sales tax.
Okay, great, because that was one of my questions, what businesses you anticipate. So this number is just kind of you've taken a mix.
Correct.
that's
Yep.
A unit number that's
Yep.
been used in the past.
It's just
over
one of
other
those things where
places.
we're not sure what we'll have, so let's just assume we're gonna have a blend of different
Okay,
things.
So that allows.
Because a restaurant is a lot higher than a typical commercial, right? A car dealership is astronomically higher, so,
Okay.
yep.
Now, if we go about 4 or so pages over, it talks about the Royce development, sales tax increment, and it's talking about electricity tax revenue and natural gas tax revenue. And I'm just wondering, is that like the franchise tax stuff?
Yep,
Okay.
franchise tax, yep.
Franchise tax, okay.
And we get that comparable data that we use directly from Rocky Mountain Power and Questar, and just what's your average usage per unit of residential and per square foot of commercial.
Okay. And then a couple of pages over, it talks about the incremental expenses of the Royce Development, RDA agency. And I was just wondering if you could just describe these. Are these like are these predicted numbers that are above the current amount?
Correct, yeah, so.
And maybe you can just review that page.
And so that's just a way that we like to look at, we like to paint a pretty picture, right? But then I think it's also fair to say, hey, we're going to have some incremental growth in revenue, but there's also going to be some incremental increase in your expenses. And so the ones that we really like to look at, we like to look at general government, we like to look at public safety, and we like to look at public works, so your roads and snow removal, things like that. And so I would say we're very good, and I'm very confident in our revenue projections, but it's really hard to accurately forecast expenses because what we do is we tie it to $1 per square foot. So we look at what your current public safety budget is and what your current total assessed value is in the city, and we just divide those two numbers, and it comes up with a dollar amount that you spend per assessed value. And then we look at what the new assessed value will be, and we just times that by the dollar amount, and that's how we kind of forecast what it would be, right? But why I say it's maybe not the best projection is if you had a $1 million office building and you had a $100,000 apartment building, well, the way we show it, your office building is going to have a lot more expenses, which might not be true. The other way people forecast it isn't really any better. But so that we've kind of noted that that's the best way to hopefully accurately forecast what those incremental expenses will be.
So let me just make sure I think I hear what you said is that we kind of take what the data from Royce City is currently, and then we just extrapolate that out to the increased number of units,
Correct.
Businesses.
Yep, increased
residents,
assessed
okay.
value. So we look at your CAFR, so your financial report about what you spent last year in those categories. Then we look at what your total assessed value was, divide those two numbers, that comes up with $1 per assessed value. And then we just times that by the new assessed value. And then we do have a few discounts to that. We have a fixed versus variable to account for, hey, maybe in 2023 you had a lot of capital expenditures in your roads, so maybe that number was elevated. So we do a discount to reflect your fixed versus your variable. And then we also do another discount because to reflect that assessed values are often lower than the actual amount of construction costs. So that's why we kind of have those two discount rates in there.
Okay, from the actual number, okay, so that's a benefit, but you're at least rolling it on the conservative side, so we're not missing
Yep.
anything then?
Yep.
Okay. And so then that just goes through, the following pages are just helping us with those numbers and how you determined what those rates were and that sort of thing then.
Correct.
All right. And then several pages over, it talks about the city cost benefit summary under the Royce development. And so it talked about sales taxes, the second one down. So the top one is property tax. That doesn't change.
You're a
so
few
we
more
understand-
pages down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
And by the way, this is pretty cool that you have all these pages memorized. I'm just really, really impressed. I mean, I'm looking at mine, minute by minute, but, so the top one, so I understand now because the property tax stays across because of the balance. The next one, it talks about sales tax. And I was just wondering, 2025, it says $18,000. We anticipate 2026, $18,000. 2027 talks about 15,000. I'm just wondering why that goes down. 2028 goes up 19,000, and then it kind of goes up sequentially from there. And I'm just not sure, what that system is, and is that part of a
The fourth line, or the you go
yes,
back up to the.
It's the second line under revenues. It says property tax and then sales tax, and
I don't think you're on
that-
the right one.
I'm not, actually, that's not quite the right one. Yeah, that one's, I think that's it. Yep, that's it.
Yep.
So I was just wondering, I was just wondering, how is that like part of, like at that point in time, it costs more because I'm just making up stories now. So
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
just
So I would
ask
need
you
to look at the model to double check that, but typically it should be growing every year because we do assume a growth rate to the taxable sales since there's not that offset of the certified tax rate.
Okay.
So I could look into that.
So maybe that's even just a typo possibly then.
Or it could just be a formula error.
The formula, okay.
Yeah.
Oh. so
These
I
are all
probably
tied to formulas, yeah.
I spent too much time thinking about that, obviously. Okay, great. And then if we go over a few more pages now where it talks about the Roy City Redevelopment Agency, and it's got pretty colors in it now. Yes, that looks like it. And I was just wondering, when you are talking about the project area acres and then the developable acres, and I was just wondering if you could explain how that fits in with this discussion.
Yep, so a great example of this. So this would be the budget for the non-Royce area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at the whole entire footprint of the development, but then a great example is Josh earlier said, hey, Arby's isn't going anywhere. So then we look at that and say, okay, that's not going to be developable, right? Harmon's isn't going anywhere. So we kind of take out those parcels that we've identified as, hey, these likely aren't going to be redeveloped. And then we look at the remaining dilapidated or underutilized properties and include that as developable. So like a big one, for instance, is behind the Harmons, you have the storage units. That could be something that's ideal for office space, right? You got I-15 frontage. So that's kind of what we've included is, hey, that likely isn't its highest and best use.
Okay, so basically we figure that of that 67 in that project area, we believe that probably 33 of those acres could be redeveloped. Otherwise,
Yep, that's what we've
it's pretty
assumed.
set there.
Yep.
Okay, all right, that's great. And then as it comes down to the, right towards the end, it talks about the additional assumptions in the annual inflation. And I was just wondering if you could explain, so the discount rate, I'm sure, is similar to what we already talked about. And I was just wondering, annual inflation.
That would also be growth rate.
Just, that's the
So it's
growth
the same
rate.
0% to hold it
Okay.
constant
All right.
for the tax rate.
And then if you go down to the absorption rates, could you just, well, there you have it. Absorption of what? Is it like the empty space or what is that referring to?
So that would just be, if you remember the big 311 square footage number, what we've assumed, if you go back up a little bit to the, yeah, right there. So we've assumed, and on the next page, you'll see more that the remaining acreage will likely be developed with time. So it won't all happen at once like the Royce. So I believe we've shown maybe a 5 to 8, I don't remember off the top of my head, absorption schedule. And so what we do is we've just taken in the pink developable square feet. So for the commercial, that $311,000 number, and then below, let's say the commercial's 15%. We've just assumed 15% of 311 is that 42.
Okay.
Yep.
in that year. It will just increase proportionally. That's your prediction. So that way, when we are talking to the entities about the amount of tax increment they might be seeing, you're just saying it's not going to be all at once. This is what we predict or anticipate might be a
Yep,
possibility.
yeah. So just showing that, hey, we anticipate that the whole downtown area will be developed in the next 8 to 10 years.
Okay. And then if we go over just a couple more pages at the very bottom of that, it talks about, and I believe these are numbers, and I'm not sure exactly where these numbers came across, but it's got numbers like, I think that's it right there. It says like in 2028 is 45 million, and in 2029 is 60 million. So I believe those numbers are referring to what are the anticipated value of that property as it increases.
So that
over
would
time.
be, and I'm not sure what order, but commercial, office, residential.
Okay.
So residential would have but that would be those 3 boxes.
Okay,
And then the
and-
bottom in bold would be what the total developable value would be for all of the uses.
And over time, it's so, like the first few years, it really increases, and then over time, you've kind of kept it stagnant, and that's just because you don't have enough information and data to predict what that's gonna be.
So the first few years is when we're showing that absorption of 15% a year, let's say. And then once you hit 100%, the same concept of the Royce development, we hold it flat to account for the certified tax rate
Because
being
we've already
flat.
developed everything that's
Yep.
been there.
Yep.
Okay.
So the same concept as the Royce development being flat.
Okay, that's great. That's very helpful. And then, okay. I think a lot of these are probably just repeat things. Well, I wasn't sure who exactly to ask all these questions to, so I'm glad you're here just to kind of go over that. And then, so if we go just a few more pages, it talks about the Royce City Development Agency increment and budget analysis. So some of those things basically now are summarizing. Now, this is what I think. So you've got the 2022 rates on the left that are in red, and then you've just got what the anticipated. You're just again talking about what you go ahead.
This is the same concept as the other one,
Okay.
but we know what this is going to be. So
Okay.
this is kind of the same concept, but since it's tied to the Royce development, we know it's going to be 4 acres. We know it's going to be a number of units. So it's the same concept, but it's tied to a specific project. So then you see, instead of being like absorb 15 years or 15% over X amount of years, we're showing, hey, 100% in 2025. Because that is when we anticipate the building being constructed.
Okay, that was very helpful, and I think I've probably pretty much gone through the whole thing, and I can just talk to you maybe, at the very end, you've got the incremental and budget analysis that kind of goes through, and you talk about some things that say like common area Turner condominiums, and it says things that like, it goes from 37 total real property, then it goes down to 0% taxable. Is that because it's going to be gone as you're redeveloping it, or?
I'll look at that, but usually if it's 0, that just shows what your current parcel. So,
It's a few pages past that, but it's like the last 2 pages, last 3 or something like that.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
it.
That's the current parcel information in the city, and so what I do is I just look at the Weber County parcel map, and that probably means it's owned by a tax exempt user.
Okay.
So they don't pay property tax on it.
Okay, great. And then just to kind of summarize, you were talking about the moderate income housing funds, and does that mean, and maybe Josh can be part of this as well too, so it sounds like the money that 10% we can use for anything in the city, but how does that work for this specific development? Will that be 10% of those units will also be that, or there will be no units and we'll just take that money and put it somewhere else? And so that's one question there. And then how much increase specific to this project, will there be? But so when you talked about the moderate income housing funding, will that be put towards specific units in your project, or are you going to have any moderate income housing units in your project?
We'll have moderate income.
Would you please, because then other people can hear that. So thank you.
Could hear you.
Yeah, to be able to have access to those funds, what we'll do is we'll look at, what's the requirement on a per unit basis to be able to meet that requirement so that 10%, at least 10% of our units can qualify for someone at that income level.
And so your units are going to be higher end. And so how does that fit for moderate? Does that just mean there will be then a bigger specific difference that will be subsidized, or how does that work?
Yeah, so typically how it's done is you look at the HUD guidelines for 80% AMI, and they break it down by 1 persons, 2 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons. And then you're allowed to take 30% of your income can go towards rents. So then you would just take, let's say I'm not going to do fast math, that would be bad for me, but you take the, yeah. And then you also deduct utilities. So there would actually be a calculation that the agency would come up with that you would say, okay, it looks like for a studio apartment, let's say the 80% AMI is based off of your income levels, $1,320. Then let's say a market rate for that would be $1,580. So then your delta would be $260. And so then that would be kind of what you would say. So that's an analysis that we would come back and do as a board. They say, hey, we do want affordable units in this, so we're willing to provide some of the affordable housing dollars it generates. And then we would do an analysis as a board to determine what that amount would be.
Right.
Does that mean we'll have go ahead?
And then they would the units, you could make them deed restricted, so they'd have to be income verified. Sorry,
And does that mean we would have a cap then on what that percentage would be? I mean, or does that mean we could still have people that could really only afford $1,000 a month, but they're able to qualify for $3,000 a month, or will it be like a cap that
it would be different where so it's qualified by their income. So let's just say that 80% area median income would be $50,000. The rents we would calculate. So let's say it's $1,400. That would be set in stone. That's what they would have to pay. They would just have to prove that they're not making $120,000 a year. They would have to prove that, hey, my income qualifies me for this subsidized rental rate.
So this would be a really highly desirable area because they would just get that much nicer apartment, but they'd still pay the same amount as if they were meeting criteria for subsidized housing in another.
Yep, and the benefit to the developer for doing that would be access to those funds, because it helps their project might not pencil with that, right? Because as I mentioned, if it's 10%, so if it's 25 units and you're at $200 a month, it can create quite a big impact.
And then I guess the people that are renting it, so I guess Woodbury, would then just need to, I guess as they vet the people wanting to do it, they'll just have to vet to make sure they meet whatever your criteria are, even though the price difference would still be great, but that's how you...
Yep. And that's a good segue into something I haven't talked about yet. So what we've gone over is the interlocal agreement process. Once that's done, and we know with a crystal ball, what we think we have in tax increment, then what we do is we negotiate a development agreement or a participation agreement with Woodbury. And that's completely separate from the interlocal agreements. And in that development agreement, that's where you include any obligation that you want Woodbury to do. So that's where you would say, hey, in order to qualify for the affordable housing units, we want 10% at 80% AMI, and you would even include in there how they verify that. So maybe it's a report that they submit to the agency annually in order to get access to those funds. In there, you would also write, you could put project benchmarks. So you could say, hey, we want this to be 5 stories. So in the event that, let's say you don't build a parking structure, or let's say it is 4 stories, well, then maybe you only get 50% of the tax increment instead of the full tax increment we'd give you, right? So that's where you negotiate with Woodbury and detail what your obligations will be too as an agency, and then what their obligations would be. So then, we would put that in that development agreement. And that will be done after we've gone through the interlocal agreement process, so we know what funds we have. So they've identified about 7.2-ish or 6. I don't remember what the gap.
The gap we're solving.
Yeah.
The yield.
Huh? Yeah.
We actually did should be 6. I think.
Yeah. So about $6 million is what their financial gap is. So what we would do is once we know how much tax increment is generated from their development, then we would go and say, okay, how do we make this deal work and pencil where we have enough funds to satisfy that gap? And that would be done after we've gone through this process with the taxing
You would back
entities.
the numbers back into it.
Yeah, so we back into it, and then maybe it's because another thing is while we've shown $25 million, that's for the whole project area. Just as a rule of thumb, what I would suggest as an agency is you have a policy where you get what you produce, right? So instead of saying, hey, a great example of this is Gateway. Boyer bought that. Salt Lake City gave them all the tax increment. They sold the Gateway. The developer came in and said, hey, we want to build all this stuff, but we need an incentive. And they're like, it's all tied up, right? So we want to look at what the Royce development will produce. And so if there's a gap in tax increment, then we would also come back to the board and talk about other maybe sources of revenue to make up that gap.
So you're not overexpending your budget, basically. Just use what don't be counting your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah, we like to call it kind of a post-production incentive, right? So it's post-performance. After they've built it, then we're going to offset some of those costs.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do that. That makes me feel much more comfortable.
Yep, and then I'll share the Excel spreadsheet. I'll go through and make sure it's clean and looks great, and then I'll share it with Brody, and then he's great to distribute it to
Okay, that'd be perfect.
whoever would like it.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions? Okay, a lot of detail. Thank you, Rob. Thank Josh. Okay, good stuff there. What I'd like to do then, the fact we have no other questions, what I'd like to do is ask for a motion to approve Resolution 23-4, okay, adopting interlocal agreement with all taxing entities within the amended 1900 Southeast Community Reinvestment Area.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I got Joe and I've got Randy. Thank you. This is a roll call vote. If you will, Brittany?
Board Member Wilson.
Aye.
Board Member Sophie Paul.
Aye.
Board Member Scadden.
Aye.
Board Member Joe Paul.
Aye.
Board Member Jackson.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward.
So
Excellent.
Randy, I have one question. I mean, not Randy,
Rob.
Robert, geez, I've known him pretty much his whole life. I just want to know how your dad's doing. I tried calling his cell phone a few weeks ago, but nobody answered, and I left.
So the main impact, so the stroke was pretty severe. So it affected about a quarter of the left side of his brain, which is your speech side. So, and then he also lost the use of his right arm and leg, but since then has made lots of progress with that, where he's walking and with assistance of a cane, but a lot of his speech is still impacted. So he's like, I don't need a cell phone. So he doesn't have a cell phone right now. So if you ever want any updates, text me.
Okay.
But I already told Board Member Wilson this. He's at the Apple Tree. I guess we don't need all of Roy to know this, but whatever. He's at the Apple Tree Village in Kaysville. And you can talk to me after. I'll let you know what room number he's
I
into.
didn't know if he'd want anyone to come.
Oh, yeah,
see
he
him.
loves visitors.
Does he? Okay.
Well, he had such a go personality, and now
Right.
he's
Yeah.
stuck in a not a go situation.
So
So he
he's
loves
walking with a
visitors.
cane.
Yeah,
He
walks
can
with the
talk
cane.
a
Still
little
no
bit.
use of his right arm, but yeah, he's able to communicate. Didn't affect his personality at all.
And
Didn't
his
affect his
brain
memory.
cells are still there, and
Yeah,
he's
he's able to
like-
joke and
Okay.
remembers everybody. So
Okay.
and yeah, yep. So that's kind of an update on where he's at.
Thank
Well,
you,
good.
Rob.
I'm glad that he's
Appreciate
improving.
the board members, thank you. We appreciate that. We do have one presentation for the RDA board budget.
Yep.
And so if you'd like to go ahead and help us through that,
Yeah,
Matt.
I'll be brief here. As you already know, what's that?
Please do.
Okay, please do. As you already know, the budget's on the back end of the city budget. We just combine them all together for your reading pleasure. The total budget is $1.5 million. Really? And then if we expend everything in that budget, the estimated fund balance at the end of that would be $1.3 million. We haven't been spending a lot of the money in there, but we do budget that just in case year after year. Right now, cash value of the RDAs is about $2.4 million dollars in cash that we hold. That's mainly over in the RDA 2, which is iOmega. We can use that, but we do, like if we're using it for another project, we do have to eventually pay that money back to that RDA over there. So pretty much identical to what we did last year.
Yeah. And are you still expecting some of those RDAs to sunset in 2 years?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Okay. With that, Board, we have the budget. That part of it, please walk through that, read through that. Goes back to the same comments we have earlier. If you do believe there is something in there that we need to adjust, we'll certainly bring that up in our next meeting. But definitely please look at that. If you have any questions, let's prepare. And then I believe, Board, is there anything else we'd like to talk about?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, I'll take that motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Randy, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone want to oppose that? No. No. Okay. Hey, thank you. Good meeting. Brody, thank you. Rob, thank you. Okay, real good detail.